Good evening. It is Tuesday, May 7, 2024 at 6:10. This meeting will be conducted in person in Sanford City Council chambers and via remote video and teleconference pursuant to 1 MRSA Section 403B 2D and Section 6 of the Sanford City Council Rules of Procedures. Members of the public may join the meeting and if you're already on, I don't need to say all that information. Members of the public, I had to do that to make you guys laugh. Thank you, I appreciate it. Members of the public may also submit comments via the City of Sanford website at www.sanfordmaine.org under Government/City Council/Contact the Council. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you please join me for a moment of silence? And now let's do roll call. Deputy Mayor Herlihy.
Present.
Councilor Stackpole.
Present.
Councilor Hanselman.
Present.
Councilor Martell.
Present.
Councilor Tranch-Montagne.
Present.
Councilor Hitchcock.
Present.
And I am Mayor Brink. Also present are City Manager Steve Buck, Executive Administrator Larissa Ricketts. And we have two different minutes to approve. So in order to approve the minutes from the regular City Council meeting held on April 16th, 2024, do I have a motion? Nate?
So moved.
Second? Ann?
Second that.
All those in favor? Thank you. In order to approve the minutes from the executive session of the City Council held April 16, 2024, do I have a motion? Ann?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
And do I have a second? Pete?
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you very much. And now, we had no subcommittees, but I do have a brief mayor's report. And first of all, I would like to thank all the teachers out there. This is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we really do appreciate the staff within our schools. Not only the teachers, and when I was the principal, I used to also include the custodians and the cafeteria workers and the counselors and the secretaries, because they all are involved with our students. So I just want to take a moment to really praise them and to thank all that they do for our community, because they're part of what helps move our community ahead. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have the next generation to take over and to do some of the wonderful work that's being done in our community. And now, for those people who know me well enough, I like to really put the counselors in the limelight and probably embarrass them too. But I did give her warning about this. So Ann, you have several things that are going on, and we're going to start with the first thing. So I would like you to explain what the backpack program is.
You bet, Mayor. So for folks that aren't familiar with the Sanford Backpack Program, it is an initiative of Strategies for a Stronger Sanford. It began about 15 years ago by then school nurse Ann Garnsey. And I have to give her a shout out because it was such an important thing that she recognized. And what she recognized is that we had students in our schools that were arriving on Mondays each week with complaints that landed them in the nurse's office, but it wasn't really about being sick, it was about being hungry. And she recognized that we had a large number of students that were showing up hungry at school that was interfering with their ability to learn. And she started in that junior high in her small space a food pantry, which today has turned into about 250,000 pounds of food going out in our community and serving over 400 students and their families each week of the school year, as well as during the summer through community distributions. And it wouldn't happen, Mayor, without the partnership between the Sanford School Department and that grassroots nonprofit organization, as well as so many folks, local businesses and families in our community that collaborate and help funding and do things like attend our annual chocolate benefit, which is coming up on May 18th. We still have 50 tickets left for folks who haven't gotten their tickets yet to that. But it's really an amazing program that showcases the positive impact that we can make as a community when we all come together and work hard together.
Thank you. Also, just if you're going to the chocolate festivities, which are phenomenal, you need to go to, before, the Stepping Out for Seniors program, and that's at Saturday at 9 a.m., so that way you can get your walking in before you eat all the chocolate. So I'm just kind of promoting that also. And there's another group that you belong to that you help facilitate, and that is Sanford Youth and something Alliance Youth?
The Sanford Youth Community Alliance.
Community Alliance. Would you explain that program?
You bet. And to be just really transparent, I haven't been able to attend much in recent days, so I don't want to take any undue. I haven't been at the table much, but it's an amazing, another grassroots community effort. It is also a program or initiative of Strategies for a Stronger Sanford, who's a great nonprofit here in Sanford. And that group is made up of individuals and you mentioned our school department earlier, school department staff who recognize that we have children in our school district, students, young adults, that are essentially homeless. They're unaccompanied minors generally. Some are over age 18, but they're living in unstable housing. So some of them are in their cars. Many of them are couch surfing and staying with friends, but they don't have a stable housing environment. And so this organization, which has really been in the works for a couple years, but really getting its feet under it now, has an organizational meeting coming up this Thursday, actually, at Nassau and Community Center. It's pulling together leadership and community volunteers and people that might be passionate about helping youth in Sanford and talking about the program and ways to plug in and help out.
Fantastic. Thank you. And during the time that the backpack program was first began at the junior high, I was lucky enough to be the principal of that school. And for those of you who don't know, Elias Thomas is here, who's the president of the Rotary. He's sitting, I can see you back there sitting in. At that point, I think you were also president back then, that they donated a lot of money every week. I would go to breakfast there, and they had a collection, and they donated money to help that backpack program begin and allow us to buy what we needed for that program. So Rotary, I just want to give a shout out to them and thank them very much for that. Also, we're going to be, just to give people a little bit of background, we're going to be having some things on the agenda that are not directly talking about the camps that are going to be taking place. What we're talking about is putting a process in place. So we'll be talking about that. So you just have to be careful that that is on the agenda. The camps are not on the agenda. So for those people who wanted to say anything about the camps tonight, the agenda items will not be the place to do that. It would be under public participation. So just to make that clear. But we will be in the future, there will be a place we'll have to talk about it again. So hopefully that was clear. If it's not clear, if you have a question when we get there, you can raise your hand and I will answer them. All right, I'd like to move on to the next two items. We have the manager's report plus the homelessness update report. And Steve, it's been quite an exciting week with everything that's been going on. So I really thank you because I know this is going to be pretty detailed. So this will answer some of the questions that you all have been calling me and asking me for this week. And I've been saying, wait for Steve's report because it's going to be covered during that. Thank you, Steve.
So do you want the homeless first or the
That would be
manager?
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we peeled back to a small administrative team meeting this past Monday so that we could take some more diligent action. So the warming center at the Lafayette School closed on Wednesday, May 1st. There was a maximum of 44 persons that were utilizing the center for overnight services and significantly more than that using it for daytime meals. The York County Shelter Program was able to place 25 individuals out of that 44. Those were persons that were willing to take services, but I thought that was a very significant number, and I want to congratulate them on that difficult work. It was noted that people that were placed did not or would not take services offered until the center was at the point of near closure. The remaining people did not take services that were offered, so that's the knowledge that we gained there. The center served over this past winter 197 unique clients over the past winter. Lafayette will continue to be a meal center through this summer on Tuesdays and Thursdays. There is, however, a question if the location of the Lafayette School will be utilized for the next year. Funding is not yet identified, and there were a number of deficiencies with the facility to running more than a temporary warming center. The deficiencies, I mean, there aren't the appropriate showers, laundry facilities and such. It really should be designed into, but it was stood up as a temporary measure. The Housing Navigator staff from the Housing Authority, the shelter, and York County Community Action are now well coordinated in providing case management and the cross-sharing of resources. The combined case management is finding multiple solutions for unhoused populations here in Sanford. We then discussed advocacy and funding. A review of the outcomes from the last legislative session was made. The summary finds that the December 23rd, 2023, the December 2023 advocacy for increased shelter funding, non-low barrier shelter funding seemingly did not prove productive. Instead, one will see a multitude of funding went into the main housing authority to be competitively distributed to a number of entities providing housing and shelter services as follows. It was noted there's $13.5 million appropriations to the Emergency Housing Relief Fund to supplement or establish programs addressing the needs of people experiencing homelessness and facing other immediate housing needs, but that's not direct funding to the shelters. $2.5 million for low barrier shelters spanning fiscal year 24-25 and 26-27. $6 million to support services for victims of crime, particularly domestic violence. $10 million for new housing units through Maine Housing's Affordable Housing Program. That's a one-time allocation. $20 million for Maine Housing Affordable Rural Rental Housing Development Program to use as match to draw federal low-income housing tax credits to Maine. $2 million to support services for homeless elementary and secondary students. That's a one-time funding, and $18 million to fund a pilot rental assistance program to support low-income renters facing eviction. And I think that has a maximum allowance of $800 per month. On the general assistance front, which is used heavily for people that are unhoused, it was noted that the required supplemental budget, which was to fund LD 1664, which would take our municipal reimbursement from 70% to 90% from the state, failed. Unless it's revived this coming Friday at the veto day or the subsequent veto day that's already being tentatively discussed. The bill carried a note of $8 million and is estimated that the legislature has committed the overall resources. They currently have about $6.5 million left. So we don't think that that's going to be revived or even change any of those percentages. So when I look at all of the funding that went into one-time allocations and such into that, over and above the state funding appropriately what are ongoing operations, I find that I'm dismayed by that. So, The next component we discussed was community policing. Police department will start both bike and pedestrian officers throughout the city starting on May 20th in an effort to address conflicts within the public areas. If encountering a person who identifies as homeless, the officers will look to establish a trust relationship with people, offer available resources, and ultimately seek to coordinate services to end their current homeless state. This is the work formerly occupied solely by the mental health unit within the police department, but who have been directed back to addressing mental health responses throughout the city. We know from that experience that building trust and offering services over time has proven the most effective means of influencing a positive change for a majority of people currently unhoused. And then the last is the Heritage Crossing encampment. There was a population that utilized both the warming center and the encampment. They would go back and forth, daytime versus nighttime. Over this past fall and winter, those who utilized the warming center ultimately have not returned to the encampment. At least that was the report as of Monday. There was an estimated population of 10 or fewer people at that point in time using the site. Fear is that people will continue to flow in there if not addressed. Housing navigators and case management services have been directly on site to put coordinated case management around these individuals. Those remaining have not taken available services. The city will provide notification to the remaining population that the encampment will be closed down by June 15th in an effort to further entice people to take available services. So we've learned that from the warming center. Not until the last day did people actually take services. So there's further enticement there. City finds that there is a public health hazard due to waste that is now entering the Mousom River. It's a public safety hazard as the police respond to multiple calls to the location. Coordinated case management and the services have been extended to the individuals that are currently occupying the site, and the site is currently under development considerations for a housing first development of 30-plus units to address people such as those that are unhoused there currently. So the city will continue to work with multiple providers to individually identify services to address the unhoused situation of the people that remain there prior to the June 15th date. Any questions on that?
I would like to make a few comments on that I am just amazed. For those of you who don't know, the Homelessness Task Force has been meeting for well over a year, and the amount of caring people in this group who are reaching out to our homeless population to make sure they're taken care of. So you'll see down at Heritage, a lot of all the people down there have been offered a place to go. Some have refused, and you can't force people to take housing. What you have to do is, what we'll do is be closing that down, but we're going to be building something, Housing First, building on that site, which would help that type of population. So it's not like we're just doing away with them. That was never, ever in our thinking at all. All of our thinking was, how do we help this population to get them back to doing what they need to do? One of the things I learned, I really like the smaller group because we were able to get an awful lot more done at a faster pace. And I think now we are to the point that we need to move fast to help the people. A lot of social workers have been involved, and they've been able to place the majority of the people when they come out and they say their drug addictions are pretty heavy. And when they've been able to come and say, I now want help, we've been able to place them. There hasn't been anybody from that group that we had to say, no, we can't find you a place. So that was Megan is the one that reported out on that, and I thought that was very impressive that our social workers have done a phenomenal job. Also, our navigators. The navigators are the people that look for housing for not only the asylum seekers but the homelessness people. And it is amazing how fast they work, and that they've been also trying to help. So this has been a team that I'm really proud to be a part of. They're really active and caring for the least of our population, and that's what I consider. For those of you who know, you know me, you know I'm a Christian, and I really follow some of the rules there. And one of the rules that I've always been taught is the least of these are the ones you need to love and to put action upon. And to me, the people who are in Heritage Crossing and any of our homeless shelters or any of the encampments, that's the least of these, and we need to show them compassion and caring. So Steve, I really appreciate your leadership in this. It's been quite the help. So please continue.
All right, so for the city manager's report, I'll do a very brief report this evening. So continue tracking legislation, although it's been extremely difficult this year. I've never experienced a short session that's anything remotely resembles what I saw this year. The revisor's office couldn't keep pace with what was going on. There's still hundreds of bills left on the table for consideration this coming Friday. So it's anybody's guess what will happen. But elements that we've been tracking, LD 1215, that's an act to end the sale of flavored tobacco. That died in the House. It passed in the Senate by just 2 votes. It died in the House. So that bill is not going to be acted upon this year. I'd like to announce very positive. York County Community Action Corporation's Transportation Division has been awarded funds out of a $2 million grant for innovative transportation solutions that connect workers with employers. This tracks back to our work with YCAC, as well as the joint land use study that was done between the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, town of Kittery, and the surrounding regions, for which Sanford has the highest number of employees housed here that work at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. Therefore, there's a lot of transportation that goes back and forth. So this is the start of the microtransit. They're in alignment to get 4 vans for that. The last count we knew there was 18 vans running out of Sanford transporting cooperatively shipyard workers, but this would start a daytime service of 4 vans, 48 passengers per trip, round tripping for the first shift. LD1, that's the former tax cap formula that we've had to live with since Governor Baldacci's years. That was put on the table when the governor felt that in order, if the state was going to provide 55% of the cost of education, which was GPA at the time, is now EPS, Essential Programs and Services, that the municipalities had to be held accountable to show that the benefit of that reduced local taxation. So that's where the LD1 tax cap formula came from. Nobody talked about the fact that it took the state another decade to finally hit the 55% mark, but the municipalities and counties were still held to this. The state never was. Finally, I know Representative Mastracchio was one of the sponsors on this, that LD1 tax cap, the formula for which no longer works. It's finally been eradicated. So small news for some, big news for others. So LD 1664, that was an act to increase the reimbursement under general assistance. I won't harp on that any longer, but for the audience, the reason that's so important is pre-COVID, the city had annual average gross expenditures of qualified costs for general assistance of approximately $150,000. During COVID, that ramped up to double because of the Emergency Housing Act that was put in there as part of the COVID relief package. So we were hovering around $300,000. With the advent of the asylum seekers coming into the community for something we had never anticipated in the budget, we had budgeted $300,000 in 2023. We hit $818,000 that year. This year, we're on track to hit $1.3 million. So in this year's budget, we had budgeted for $1 million on that gross expenditure. That's why going from 70% reimbursement to 90%, it's about a $200,000 differential for us. That's a game changer for us in our world. So we will continue to work with our legislators towards getting that funding changed in the future. Community paramedicine, a lot of dialogue in there. That failed as far as them the state putting allocation of funds in there to authorize expenditures for community paramedicine under the main care program. The federal government has not yet done it under the CMS. It's all in there. It's ready to go. It's just a matter of the funding to be put in place. Chief Soucy continues to work on that diligently. There is pending federal legislation for $25 million each of the next 5 years to pay to communities such as us that are ready to go with this program as an interim step until such time as CMS makes the adjustment in Medicare and the states as well as main care. So I've put forward communications to the Senator's office today on that. Also, at the recent finance meeting on Maine Health that I serve on, it was discussed. Maine Health has started a interfacility transport service for ambulance to go from facility to facility in their consolidated network. As part of that, all hospitals are currently expending longer average number of days, length of stay, because there isn't the capacity for secondary discharge to rehab facilities, nursing homes, in-home nursing care is in short supply. So people are held longer in the hospitals because they can't be discharged to the next level of services that were there pre-COVID. That being said, community paramedicine is a means to bridge that. So our we would have dedicated paramedic services here in the community that go right to your home after you've been discharged, working under direct orders from the hospital, and give you services that you may not be able to obtain otherwise. So that being said, we're going to energize our conversations again with Maine Health. We already have ongoing dialogue with NASON for them to pass community grants back to us to fund our program. The equipment's been ordered and is on its way here. It's now a matter of getting the appropriate funds to pay for the staffing to move that program forward. The next item I have here is a notice of retirement. Assistant Fire Chief Robert Arnold has issued us his notice of retirement to be effective August 8th of this year. A.C. Arnold has been serving the city in the capacity as Assistant Chief for the past 5.5 years. Prior to that, he worked for 23 years in Michigan, predominantly for the Midland Fire Services. A.C. Arnold serves as the Administrative Deputy Chief, and his knowledge will be greatly missed. Chief Soucy is actively working with HR to get the advertisement out as rapidly as possible so that we may be able to either promote or hire a new assistant chief into that position and have crossover time to take advantage of the significant amount of knowledge that AC Arnold has and on how to operate within the systems. The April 3rd and 4th storm event that we all remember, the wet, heavy snow that hit us, we know that it's going to be, it's eligible to be designated as a FEMA storm. It hasn't been declared, just that. So historically, we always track our 24-hour expenditures. So in a typical FEMA storm, you track your most expensive 24-hour period where you had to upstaff, utilization of equipment, overtime, anything over and above typical operating expenditures that are due to that storm. We've been advised by York County Emergency Management, Art Cleves, who has a significant amount of federal knowledge. He believes that we're going to be able to, for this storm, once it's declared, apply for an extended period. So, for example, our Public Works Department has been tracking, we've expended nearly $90,000 from April 3rd through to this date, clearing up the sides of the roads, the widowmakers, the branches, the limbs, all of the downed wood and such into that. And we probably have another month worth of work to do just on that aspect. So we're tracking those expenditures, and hopefully the federal money will come through and we'll seek reimbursement. The last thing that I have is the working with our assessor today. He continues to plug in the assessment values after the closure date of April 1st. We had a budget meeting on April 2nd whereby the budget was adopted. There is a significant amount of new value still coming into the system that's being cataloged in. And the biggest amount of that value over and above what was projected on April 2nd is personal property. So kudos to our new assessor, Ben Thompson, has been working with our businesses to get a more accurate listing of business equipment, the predominance of which qualifies for the business equipment tax exemption program. Therefore, some of the personal property that they may have been paying for in the past will now become exempt, and the state will reimburse the city as opposed to the businesses. So it's a great benefit to them, as well as getting more value onto our books and getting that money back from the state. So that being said, we had projection of a mill rate of 16.17 or a 6.8% increase. If the assessor with the valuation that he has now plugs all of that in, we'd go from an overlay of anticipated of $390,000 to $881,000. So that's my indication to you as counselors that there's room there to make a further reduction on this year's tax bill. As he gets those values plugged in, I'll come back to you at a later point in time. You should be able to suggest a reduced overlay in there and further reduce the tax rate impact. So we're at 6.8% right now. If you brought it down to, quick math, if you brought it back down to the estimated $390,000 overlay, you could reduce that to 6.4%, which is very positive this year. So, and that's the end of my report.
Fantastic. You were mentioning the fire department, and our office had an experience with the fire department. We had one of the light fixtures in our ceiling smoke up our whole waiting room. And what was really neat was we have an assistant who works part-time for another city's fire department. And she went right through our building, knocked on all the doors, and said, "You need to evacuate now." "No, would you mind please going to the parking lot?" "No." She just knocked on it. You can tell, very efficient. So all the doctors listened to her. They all evacuated with their patients. The fire department came in, did not hack up our ceiling because they knew exactly what it was. So we just had to turn off the electricity there and take out the bulb, and our electrician came in and replaced it, so we were good to go. So it was a fun experience. Bill enjoyed it. It was kind of entertaining. So anytime you can entertain my husband, it's a good thing. So it worked out really well. So I'd like to shout out to the fire department. Thank you for your help. And now we have, under presentations and communications, we have a recognition of 2024 Earth Day participation. And Deputy Chief Eric Small, I believe you are doing this?
Yes, good evening. My name is Eric Small. I'm a police officer here in Sanford. As you know, for those at home, I'm currently serve as your Deputy Police Chief. In the spring of 2019, the community outreach at the police department decided to organize Earth Day event, clean up throughout the city.
Can you guys hear? No. That mic is on.
Hear me now?
Ben is coming.
Ben to the rescue.
Ben, bring it in, Ben.
Our hero, Ben, yes. I don't want to miss any of your speech because I know how fantastic and phenomenal it's going to be.
Now the pressure's on.
Pressure's on.
Test. I don't think so. A little better. Test 1.
There you go.
I mean, I can lean down. Is that helpful? Maybe that's why Chief Anderson always lays in a little
that's
bit like
better.
this. Is that better? Okay.
That's a lot better, Ben.
I think you did it, Ben. Okay, I'll start over. My name's Eric Small. I'm a police officer here in your city and currently serving as the Deputy Police Chief. Back in 2019, the Sanford Police Department started to form a community effort to clean up the city, and we did that on Earth Day. And back then, we had essentially 3 private organizations come forward. Pine Tree Properties, which is owned by Jake and Heather Crosby. I'm not sure if Jake and Heather are here tonight or not. Great Bay Services, who you see a very large group seated behind me here, and you've already mentioned the work of Elias and the Sanford Springville Rotary Club. Those 3 organizations were really the foundation of our efforts back then. And tonight we're here to recognize them. I think it would be, I think it's very important to also talk about the other groups that have come out in the last 5 years to help us with our efforts. We have a kind of a motto at the Sanford Police Department that no one accomplishes anything alone, and this really proves that effort. So over the course of the last 5 years, the Sanford Housing Authority, the York County Shelter Program, the YMCA, the Police Department, the Fire Department, the Public Works Department has come out and helped bring the stuff to the dump. The Parks and Rec, the Main Options Program. This year we saw Fast and Happy Bicycles. It Takes a Village. Many Sanford citizens have also pitched in to help in many different types of cleanups. Dave Janess was a big partner and his team over at Janess Concrete throughout the years. We've done a lot of cleaning up. And I don't know many tons of trash. I'm sure Councilor Stackpole probably has an estimate for us here. But we've picked up a lot of trash over the years. And back in 2019, if I remember correctly, we may have had 25 people out there. And it has just really grown over the years. This year, we estimated to have approximately 125 plus people out walking the city, cleaning up. Still, Pine Tree Properties, Jake and Heather had upwards of 15 to 20 people. Great Bay Services had at least 75 people, and the Sanford Springville Rotary had a very large group as well. And it just really shows what our community means to other people. And it really comes down to the citizenship and the willingness to get out there, get your hands dirty, and pick up the city. And it does make a difference. Having done it a few times, well, many times with the groups, we pick up a lot of things. You'd actually be surprised sometimes what you can find on the side of the road. So tonight we come here to really recognize the 3 foundational groups. Pine Tree Properties, John Stimmel and his team are here. Pine Tree Properties, Jake and Heather may not be here. John Stimmel from Great Bay Services, and you said Elias is already back there, and several other Rotarians have come in tonight to be presented with a certificate. And we made up a certificate suitable for framing, signed by the city manager. Maybe I'll just show it to you.
Nice.
Quality artwork produced at the Sanford Police Department, just for the record. I'd like to call up John. Where are you? Come on up. And the whole team. Yep.
Yeah, bring 'em all.
Elias and the Rotary Club, would you like to come up? And Jake, I'm not sure if you're here or not. I did talk to all the people. Jake was not sure. Hey, how you doing, pal?
I'm great.
Good. You got a speech?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
You good with that? You got a speech?
You guys good?
A speech, yes.
Hey.
Fantastic.
Let me give you your certificate.
All right.
Here you go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Step right up. Give a little speech.
All right. Just wanted to make sure the mic works. Thank you. Great job out there, Ben. Great job out there, Ben, by the way. All right. Hello and good evening. I am Jake Russo, a proud member of Great Bay Services for over 5 years. And I'm going to make this as short and sweet as possible. We, on behalf of Great Bay Services, we would like to say thank you so much, and we are truly honored to be awarded this incredible recognition from everyone here in Sanford. And I gotta tell you, being a part of the Earth Day cleanup really, it just, in all honesty, it was special. I mean, getting to clean up a whole city and getting recognized for it, man, I gotta tell you. Now, we would like to thank all the volunteers who made this all possible. So if I missed one, I apologize, but we want to make sure your voices are heard. First up are the Sanford police officers and the firefighters, the employees over at Walmart, Lee Burnett and the Sanford Trails Committee, Woodford's, which is very near and dear to my heart because I am a part of it, Northland Enterprises, who donated money for the cool t-shirts you see out here. And lastly, Curtis Lake Church for the $75 donation for food for the volunteers. And trust me, it was good. And in closing, I would just like to say, from the bottom of my heart and from all of us here at Great Bay Services, thank you all so much for making Earth Day 2024 something memorable. And I promise you, next year, it is going to be just as, if not, even better. Thank you all very much.
I'm not sure how you follow that up.
That was one of the better speeches I've heard in a long time. He
Yes,
was-
I don't know how you follow that
amazing.
up, but we're going to let Elias try to follow it up. There you go, Elias.
Not even Elias can follow.
I wouldn't even,
Still talking.
I wouldn't attempt, but it's, one of the nice things that's extra special for us this year is that the director of Great Bay, Pam Lowy, is a fellow Rotarian, and she's ascending up the ladder in our organization. So we'll be banding together to continue this effort. And it was I remember my daughter was part of that first cleanup, and the stories that she came back with respect with what she found on the side of the road and so forth was mind-boggling. So thank you very much for the recognition.
Well, thank you.
And I'll accept this on behalf of Jake and Heather. They're not here tonight, but they also have done a fantastic job, and so we appreciate them. I failed to mention that some of you have come out for cleanups too, so thank you very much. And this is why we do it right here, right?
All right.
So, awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we can just move right along. I don't think the rest of the agenda is even going to match that at all. Okay, presentation of the 2 fire stations construction educational videos. And Jody, come on down. Oh, Jordan, excuse me. Her mom is Jody, and let me tell you, I know Jody because she used to babysit for our kids. So I always mix you two up.
It's okay. Everyone that knows my mom calls me Jody. I get it all the time.
I'm Chief Scott Susi of this.
Okay, I have 2 items on this. I have the 2 video appeals for the upcoming referendum, and then I have a quick draft communications plan. like last time, I'll send everyone the video links to your email so you can send me any thoughts, comments, and ideas via email. So the first video is the newest edition of the shorter fire station appeal video. We've replaced some of the staged B-roll footage with photos from fires and incidents in our community, along with some station renderings.
I'm Chief Scott Soucy of the Sanford Fire Department, and I'm here with our assistant chiefs.
Is that loud enough?
Do you know which one, Ben?
No, it's going to be done right.
On the computer?
He said he could do it right there.
I'm going to keep it down around 10 of the
I'm
highest.
sorry.
Because it's very loud.
Okay, get rid of the spider.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm Chief Scott Soucy of the Sanford Fire Department, and I'm here with our assistant chiefs, Bob Arnold and Rick Smith. Together, along with our dedicated team of over 50 professionals, we are committed to ensuring the safety of the 22,000 residents we proudly serve. Our community is growing, and with that growth comes increased responsibilities.
In 2023 alone, the Sanford Fire Department received over 4,400 calls for service. Behind these numbers are real stories, emergencies ranging from fires to car accidents, water rescues, and more. Our team also provides essential EMS services, from advanced life support to lending a helping hand to those in need.
We're here for you, whether it's a life-threatening situation or just someone requiring basic assistance. Now, we need your support. Independent studies show that constructing 2 new fire stations is crucial to meeting the growing needs of Sanford and Springvale. We are convinced these facilities will not only better serve you, the members of our community, but also ensure the safety of our staff. Join us in building a safer future together.
Your support matters, and together we can continue to ensure the safety and well-being of Sanford and Springvale.
Okay. And then the second video is our longer...
I'm Chief Scott Soucy.
Longer, more detailed station appeal video. It'll be distributed in its entirety, but we'll also segment it out for targeted outreach. It's about 3.5 minutes, which is nowadays kind of long for people's attention spans.
And I'm here to shed light on why our community urgently needs not 1, but 2 new fire stations. First, our existing stations are aging. The Springvale station is nearly 100 years old. Our stations have reached their intended lifespans and are presenting a host of challenges, including structural vulnerabilities, outdated designs, and several other issues that compromise our ability to serve you effectively. Maintaining structures of this age is not only impractical, but it compromises the safety of our firefighters and the efficiency of our operations.
Our current facilities are simply too small for our growing need in the community. Built in an era when equipment was smaller, they struggle to accommodate modern vehicles. Space constraints limit our functionality and affect our ability to provide prompt and efficient emergency services. These problems can't be solved by retrofitting. Independent studies show we need new, purpose-built stations that can adapt to the evolving needs of our community.
Location matters. Our current stations are no longer optimally placed, impacting insurance rates and response times. The current locations of the Sanford and Springvale stations are not conducive to maintaining low ISO ratings and maintain homeowners' insurance costs. New facilities strategically placed will improve our community's safety and ensure quicker responses to emergencies.
Outdated safety standards are a significant concern. The stations were constructed before we fully understood modern safety standards, codes, and practices, especially cancer prevention. Retrofitting cannot bring the stations up to the required standards for the safety of our firefighters and to meet all the current requirements for fire stations. Health risks are real and imminent. The lack of space for separate decontamination zones and washdown areas poses a significant threat to the well-being of our firefighters. We must prioritize their safety and provide the facilities necessary to mitigate these risks.
Our current fire stations are not ADA or Title IX compliant. This presents a critical challenge, especially for our female firefighters. There are currently no separate restrooms or shower stalls for the females in our force. Female firefighters must wait to shower after a call until all of our male employees are showered, because only the men's restroom has showers. Our female colleagues have the same training, pass the same exams, and perform the same duties as the males. They deserve the same facilities.
Let's talk about costs. Firefighter PPE is currently set off-site for decontamination due to the absence of facilities at the current stations. New facilities will eliminate this cost.
We have comprehensively studied and determined that the cost of retrofitting would be significant. Constrained by the space and given the age of the buildings, that money would be better invested in constructing new facilities that meet modern standards.
By approving the construction of the new fire stations, we invest wisely in the safety and well-being of our community. These new facilities will not only address the shortcomings of our current stations, but also ensure that our firefighters have the tools and space they need to protect us effectively.
So I also recently had a meeting with Rob Frank and Tori Britton from WBRC and Bob Mitchell, and they kind of gave some valuable feedback on refining our promotional materials, and they had some suggestions for the videos, such as incorporating a clear call to action and having a campaign slogan, as well as enhancing some graphics and adding some specificity to key points. But a large part of our meeting was going over this communications plan, which I just want to quickly touch on all of this stuff. The communications plan on this slide specifically is going to outline some key components of our comprehensive communications strategy for the upcoming referendum. Starting with websites and social, we will be leveraging the city's website as well as our Sanford Connects website, and the Sanford Connects is going to be kind of the informational hub for all of the fire station referendum information. You can find previous reports, presentations, the videos will all be there, the renderings, project timeline. We'll also be using the fire department's Facebook as well as the city's Facebook. And then taking the communications offline, we would love to do some meetings with local organizations. I think we found with the SS4A meeting groups, it's a lot easier to get an engaged audience if you're tethering the meeting to an already existing organization or an event. And then getting down to the videos, you've seen the short appeal and the longer appeal. We're also working on a video that is just about firefighter cancer, and then a little bit later we'll do a educational video with all the financials. Getting down to signage, this was definitely a big thing, getting a billboard sign at each spot, and then we also had discussed maybe one in Central Park for people that are going to be at the farmers markets and have a little bit more time to read. So these signs will have station renderings, some additional information that if you happen to be face-to-face, you can read it, but the QR code will lead everyone to the Sanford Connect site where they can kind of connect with everything else. And then getting to some more offline, we are trying to just connect more with people, the residents offline, and having that face-to-face or something they can hold, I think is really important. So we're working on developing some flyers, some brochures, and door hangers. We're also exploring a local cup of coffee campaign where you kind of play on the idea that a vote yes will provide residents protection and provide our firefighters with facilities designed with their safety in mind for the next 75 years at a cost equal to X amount of cups of coffee a month. And so the thought would be that we would have these cups of coffee at some local shops, and then people can walk around and see, okay, this is the price, the weekly price that a new fire station would cost me. I have to work with WBRC on like the specifics of all of that, but expect some more information on that soon. And then getting down again to those door hangers and posters, these will be strategic.
Jody, could you take just a break 1 second for all those people, excuse me, did I get the wrong name again? Jordan?
It's all the same.
Anybody who needs to leave, now would be a great time. Yeah, I know most of you have to get kids back to stuff, so that way it won't be interrupting the presentation.
Right.
Good job, thank you.
Thank you guys again. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry about that, but it was very distracting. Go ahead, keep going.
Okay, door hangers and posters. So I'm working with WBRC to develop some informational posters that will be in all the public buildings, as well as we'll be reaching out to any businesses that support to see if they would be interested in hanging up some of these posters. And then, again, collaborating with WBRC on creating a campaign calendar that's going to be fairly specific on what deliverables we're going to be putting out, but as well as organizing and ensuring a coordinated message from now till November 5th for all city departments and city staff. And then getting down to the media sponsors, we need to be mindful of maintaining media engagement, particularly closer to the elections. I think that that's going to be crucial. Definitely reaching out to Sanford Springville News, Portland Press Herald, as well as like the TV stations. And then getting down to hosting and participating in local events, I just think will further expand our public outreach efforts and just kind of further embed the fire department within the community. And we had discussed on November 5th, having some firefighters and EMT, obviously following the law, present at the polls, just kind of that last minute push of connecting the election to our fire department. And then I think that this had been discussed a lot in the working group, was trying to see if there is some grassroots organizations that can spring up, such as a Friends of Sanford Firefighters, that could speak on our behalf in favor of the referendum. And then getting to November 5th, I think me specifically, since I'll be doing the communications, but just trying to be mindful that this is a nonpartisan request for a nonpartisan referendum. I think that November 5th is going to be just a maybe stressful election day for many people. So just trying to remove the politics from it and just kind of keep it as very local, targeted approach to all of that. But the big thing that I'm working on right now is trying to figure out a campaign slogan. The working group has discussed a slogan that kind of focuses on the idea that the Sanford Fire Department is always there for you. Now it's your time to be there for them. And we still have to kind of figure out the exact legal ease of what we can and can't say when it comes to voting. But the thought is having our campaign slogan or hashtag end with a phrase of approve new fire stations, support new fire stations, etc. And so the list that we have going right now is be their hero, or your vote, their safety, modern stations for modern safety, a safety tomorrow starts today, answer the call, they protect us, today we protect them, and they save lives, your support saves them. So something along those lines of that they're here for us when you call, so now we should be there when they call on us. And that is all that I have.
Well, thank you. I like the two videos, much better than the ones we had that were professionally done by the other group that didn't have our people in it.
Yes.
This was so much better.
I think it is. I think it just connects the residents to what's happening more, and I think that Councilor Hanselman had reached out and said, like, oh, maybe if we could include stuff with like the mill fire or that, just kind of sparked the idea of like, yes. And even with the River Street fire, it's just so interesting because fires end up becoming a community event. When I was taking pictures there, I'm watching, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many people that are watching the fire department work. And so I think that trying to incorporate that into the videos just helps people connect, because when they see the fire department, they're in these big trucks and they have a helmet on. And so it's not that human to human, face to face interaction. So if we can kind of bring that in with the videos, I'm hoping that that will be helpful with our efforts.
And I don't think people understand how many toxins get onto a firefighter's uniform and what they're breathing in and everything while they're fighting. And I did notice that when we looked at some of the newer fire stations, they also didn't have the fire trucks in with all the clothing. So when you start a truck, all that is also going over.
The exhaust is going off into it. They're off-gassing into the apparatus bay. And I think what you had said about the fires is really important. And I'm going to reach out to Bob Mitchell to put together a statement about that, because he made that point on Friday, is that 50 years ago, a lot of the homes are built with just like wood and basic natural materials, and now you have inorganic materials and the smoke is more black and it burns hotter and it burns longer, and that there's just more toxins being emitted. Mm-hmm. And while there might not be more fires, the fires are more dangerous. And that I just don't think that always is top of mind when people think about the fire sciences.
Does anyone have any questions? Well, thank you for all, the head guy.
Not questions, but comments. So, money was no object, and I had a magic wand. I'd build the stations just because of the carcinogenics, if nothing else, just because of the carcinogenics. I've been to the Fierro conferences, and it puts the fear of God into you to learn what we truly know now that we didn't know about the carcinogenics. It's the length of exposure. They're not just exposed at the fire scene. They're exposed for every working hour of the day that they're there near and in those stations, because there is not the appropriate separation of hot, warm, and cold zones. You can't separate out the clothing that are off-gassing constantly. The equipment's off-gassing. We don't have the extractors or any of that type of equipment that we need to do the job well. And it's become an issue in recruitment now. We see that because a lot of the formerly part-time stations that had some full-time staff but supplemented that with volunteers and or per diems, they've had to go professional now. They've had to go to full-time staff. They have reasonably new facilities, and they're extracting the younger people coming in. Since we started studying this in 2015, the cost for the stations today is doubled. So putting this off has been an extreme expense. In working with Larissa and Jordan on the communications plan and such into that, when Larissa's pulling up from Historical Society, the pictures of the Springvale station from literally 100 years ago with the 3 original bays. So Sanford, you might say, is frugal, right? Because that station is 100 years old. They built 2 more bays on there that are still being used. The other 3 are virtually non-functional. But you can see the pictures of the horse-drawn wagons in the 3 bays. And then the other observation was that when they first opened, they shared the horses with other departments of the city. So when a fire call went out, they had to go get the horses from whoever had them, bring them to the department, hitch them up, and then go respond. So frugal only lasts for about so long. It's time to address our stations. The other thing that's coming down the road is OSHA regulations. So the fire standards, NFPA, have been out there for well in excess of 50 years. The OSHA regs are reflective of that. The federal government is working now to fully implement those. So when Chief Susi did the analysis on that, from an operational perspective and an equipment perspective, the city's made the investments. The city has put the appropriate operational procedures in place. We're in really good shape. Where we're not is in our stations. We're not alone in that, but it's going to be about a 2-year implementation period. So I sit here tonight, I no longer contemplate the if, and I'm contemplating less the when, because the when is going to be forced upon us, whether we want to pay for it now or we want to pay for it in the future, because when those OSHA regulations come down, there is nothing that's in compliance with our stations, nor can we retrofit them to get us to that point. So that's coming down the pike. It's a couple of years out. Thank goodness that times up reasonably well for our anticipated construction plans, because we look at that timeline. If we do this appropriately, we can take on the new construction and convert to the permanent debt service at about the same time that we're retiring the predominance of the city's current debt, so that we can keep our annualized debt service reasonably flat. There's a couple of critical years in there. So the people know the November 5th referendum, we know that's an estimated cost of $42 million right now. It's $2.5 million a year for each year you avoid building of an escalator currently. And that if, I'm losing my train of thought, but if I can't apply on the city's behalf for congressional direct spending, I can't apply to USDA, I can't apply to a host of the SAFER grants, all of those other funding sources that will reasonably buy down our cost until I get a yes vote. I know Lebanon's been struggling with this extensively. They keep going back to the congressional offices to get a grant. They typically can get a grant big enough to build their entire station, but their community has not done a yes vote, so they have an authorized project. So we need a yes vote to be able to reduce our costs so that we can apply for the leverage funding to get us there. And if we can use that leverage funding in the first 2 to 3 years of the debt service, we could assume it at that point in time and keep level. So, thank you.
Excellent. So that just demonstrates how very important it is for our community to vote yes on this. So thank you, Steve. Also, I wanted to make a comment, and we talked about the carcinogens and our firefighters being able to shower and to get that stuff off. And Steve spoke about the different zones, which we do not have at this point. In the literature I was reading, it talked about the fact that firefighters, because of how our stuff is set up, are taking that into their homes. So their children are being exposed. Their significant others are being exposed to those carcinogens. So it's so important. It goes beyond just that building. It goes into the families. So it's a very important thing.
Yeah,
So
in my
thank you.
meeting with Bob Mitchell on Friday, he told me that I think it was Honolulu Fire Department that forced children of firefighters had a specific type of bone cancer that was caused from their parents bringing carcinogens home.
Wow.
And it's something you just don't think about when you think of being a firefighter. I never knew that all of this was happening until I started this position and I learned about it. I just don't think people associate that with being a firefighter.
Yeah. We've learned a lot in the last few years.
Learned a lot.
Yeah, we have. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
And I'll get the name right, Jordan.
Funny if you'd said Jody.
Yeah, it would have been. All right. Steve, was there anything under public participation?
Well, I don't know how many people have signed up tonight, and we've got a large crowd here.
Nothing under there? Okay, good. We'll keep moving on. So we're going to public hearings. And I hereby open this meeting, this public hearing on the application being submitted to the State of Maine CDBG program for 2024 Housing Assistance Grant to support construction of 4 affordable home ownership units in Sanford to be constructed by Habitat for Humanity. And it's Amy Nucci?
Nucci, yep.
Okay.
Did you see it? It's minimized. Yeah. Now that I'm doing it in front of people, I'm not seeing the button I need. Okay. All right, I'm Amy Nucci. I'm the director at Habitat for Humanity, York County. I feel like I was just here, so it's great to be here again. We're so appreciative of the city's support. Just give a really brief overview of Habitat and how we work, and then talk about the specific project that we're requesting funding for. So Habitat for Humanity York County builds affordable homes throughout York County. To date, we've completed 35 homes throughout the county. 5 have been completed in Sanford, and 2 are in progress. The 2 in progress are on Allen Street. One is about wrapped up, and the other one is a modular home that's going to be set probably next Monday now, as long as the weather helps. About, I think, 4 out of those 7 properties, which reflects more homes, have been purchased either with the support or I guess with the facilitation of the city or with directly from the city. So we're really grateful for all of the support and partnership in helping make land affordable to Habitat, because that's not, it's not widely available to us right now. So we make homeownership affordable for households earning 60% or less of the area median income. What that looks like is folks working in education, healthcare, hospitality. One of our current home buyers actually works here in Sanford at York County Community Action. So it's really exciting to be able to keep people in the communities where they're working and serving. Our selection criteria is based on need, so a need for a safe, decent, affordable housing. That can look like anything from overcrowding to unaffordability to unsafe circumstances. And right now, we're really seeing a combination of all of those things. It's not just one. It's usually something unsafe coupled with the unit not being affordable. Our second criteria is willingness to partner. A cornerstone of Habitat's program is that our home buyers work on the construction of their home. They work on the construction of other Habitat homes. A dual head of household completes 400 hours of sweat equity. A single head of household completes 200 hours. And included in that is both homebuyer education as well as hours that are donated by friends and family to really create a community of people who are invested in the success of the homebuyer. And our third criteria is the ability to pay. One of the biggest misconceptions about Habitat is that we give our homes away. That's not true. We sell them to the home buyer through an affordable mortgage, and then those proceeds are recycled to build more Habitat homes. So our home buyers are a critical partner in all of the work that we do. So that's sort of how our home buyer program works. We are requesting to the state for $300,000 in community development block grant funding to support the construction of 4 homes at 3 Beaver Hill. This is a property we purchased from the city in 2002. We're planning to do 2 single-family homes and 1 duplex on the lot, and we're looking to begin that project in late 2022, probably towards the end of the year, and we're going through the subdivision process now for that project. So the total project budget is $1.2 million. We'll fund the gap with our traditional fundraising model, as well as the proceeds from some of the home build projects we have going on now. But I'm happy to answer any questions about the project that folks have.
This is a public hearing, so what we do is there anybody to speak in favor of this here? Anyone to speak against? Okay, seeing as there's none, I declare this public hearing closed. Thank you very much, Amy.
Great, thank you. That's the easiest part of my day.
I hereby open the next public hearing on the proposed ordinance revision to repeal the replace Charter 265 flood plan management corresponding with updated NFIP requirements and the new FEMA, can I just say FEMA? All right, flood insurance rate maps, active July 17, 2024. And thank you for, I don't know if you're the one who sent this to us, but it was very interesting to read all that, so I appreciate that.
Yes, this is a federal mandate that if we want to continue to allow our property owners to receive flood insurance, they've been working on updating the flood maps for the last 5 or 6 years. They finally worked their way through all the various appeal processes, and they have now mandated that municipalities update the updated ordinance as well as the updated maps by July 17th. So today is the first read on that amendment. Basically, they provided us that draft ordinance. We had to correct a few, they called us a town, so we had to update it to say City of Sanford and a few other typographical errors. But other than that, this is the model ordinance as requested from them. Just a housekeeping note, if you guys do accept this in 2 weeks, we then have to, which we already have forwarded, but we then have to get permission from them, their authorization that our ordinance does meet their standards. Again, they wrote it for us, so it should meet their standards. The flood maps have been dramatically updated in that they're now to scale and they now have a aerial photograph attached to them. So essentially, Sanford's maps did not change, but they have been greatly clarified. So the previous firm maps were various scales with no photo attached, so you looked at it, but you didn't really know what you were looking at. So the new flood maps are great. It is a layer on our GIS system, so you can click right on it and you can zoom right in, and you can clearly tell if your property is or is not located in a flood zone. So that is a great benefit that we're going to receive from this update.
So we don't have it yet, but we will receive it.
The layer is already on our GIS. They're not technically official yet, but the layer has been uploaded onto
And
our
is that
GIS.
the yellow that's on there?
Correct.
Okay. And within the pinks along the rivers and stuff?
Correct.
Get that? Okay, good. Thank you. I like to play around with those things.
In your neighborhood.
In my neighborhood, yes. Anyone to speak in favor? Anyone to speak against? Hearing none, I declare this hearing closed. Thank you very much. The And I don't know if you're going to do the next one, a public hearing on the proposed amendment to Chapter 280 of the Sanford City Ordinances for a revision to 280-11-6 urban zone.
So if you guys recall, about a month and a half ago, we brought a revision to the urban zone before you, basically switching it from a 20-foot minimum setback to a 20-foot maximum setback. We inadvertently made a mistake, I'll say. We didn't realize, well, we did realize, we didn't catch it in time, that the ordinance requires trash receptacles, dumpsters, to be within the setback area, meaning it used to require them to be more than 20 feet away. By changing that from a minimum to a maximum, it now says that dumpsters had to be within 20 feet of the street. Obviously, that was not the intent. So this is basically a correction to say that the dumpsters need to go at least 20 feet or more back from the street. There was also one error that was previously in the ordinance that we're addressing. For structures, it used to say principal and or accessory structures. We're striking the word accessory. So it's principal structure is a maximum setback of 20 feet.
Right, thank you. Is there anyone here to speak for? Anyone against? Hearing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Ooh. Oh, okay, sorry. Hold on one moment. Diane?
Yes, Madam Mayor, can I ask if the dumpsters that you're talking about, do they include an enclosure that, like the stores are required to by the ordinance?
That provision in the ordinance never changed. So yes, that provision is still in place.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Diane, is your hand is still up? You're done. Okay. Seeing none, I declare this public hearing closed. And moving right along, I'm going to open another public hearing on the proposed ordinance created the position of Assistant City Manager within the Administrative Department pursuant to Chapter Sections 205.3 and as a grade 17 within the wage and classification system, and to be responsible for directing various citywide department activities and operations, assisting in providing administrative guidance to executive staff, and acting for the city manager in his or her absence, and performing all other work as required. So, Steve, I think you're going to take this?
Yes. Excuse me. So as far back as, 2012, City Council has looked at and examined over that period of time the organizational and administrative structure of community development, as well as an assistant city manager. Back in 2016, the determination was made that the community development was the higher need at that point in time. That office was created by the same process, was propagated through until just this year. City Council has again looked at that and has determined that at this point in time, the organizational structure is in need of the assistant city manager position. So as that is a position that has not been created at this point in time, we have to go through the process to set forward by the charter under 205.3. The office needs to be created. City Council has, prior to this point, anticipated this, put it into the municipal budget, and has adopted the grade 17 fiscal year 2024-25 at $132,228. But at this juncture in time, pursuant to the charter, you have to hold this public hearing as you are, take input if there is any, and do a first read and then a second read. And by that act of ordinance, you will so create said office. And by doing so, you will approve the classification. We had anticipated that in the wage and classification system that was worked on prior to 2023. It was adopted January 31st of 2023. So we had the job description in there. We had the classification of it, all in anticipation for this future action. So I have an affirmative motion there, not for this evening, but should you continue to move forward with this. The only request I have that's outside of the normal process is if there's no adverse input tonight, or the council doesn't want to make any significant changes, I would ask to be able to advertise this as soon as tomorrow. while we're waiting for that second review, because we are missing man hours now, and the drain on the system is heavily felt, so, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll talk about that under new business, too, if anybody has any objections. All right, so... Did you ask? No, I am going to. Is anybody here to speak in favor? Anyone against? Seeing none, I declare this public hearing closed. I'm going to open another public hearing on the proposed ordinance establishing a moratorium on the construction of campgrounds in order to allow time for regulations pertaining to design factors that may constitute a danger to public health and to be examined and updated. And Maura, if you would read what this
Is being proposed?
What is being proposed, so everybody will know what it is. And all of you got this in your packets. Should have had that.
City of Sanford ordinance establishing a moratorium on the development of campgrounds and standards within Code Chapters 270 and 280 of the Sanford City Code. Whereas the City Council has found the need to address standards and definitions for the establishment of campgrounds to protect and prevent against serious public harm if unamended, and whereas current standards for campgrounds within Chapter 280 zoning are considered deficient in definitions and standards, and whereas current standards for campgrounds within Chapter 280 zoning do not provide for adequate setbacks from residential or other developments, and whereas current standards for campgrounds do not address restrictions or standards related to the time and length of use of said development as being seasonal or year-round, and which also conflict with mobile home park standards, and whereas the year-round use of campgrounds poses an impact upon public services of waste disposal, schools and other public services not currently addressed, and whereas the city's existing ordinance do not provide an adequate mechanism to regulate and control the standards of permitting of campgrounds and are inadequate to prevent serious public harm that could be caused, and whereas the city needs a reasonable amount of time to determine the implications of the continued establishment of campgrounds and develop reasonable regulations governing the standards of their land use approvals and permitting, and whereas during the period of this moratorium, the city will work on developing appropriate land use regulations concerning campgrounds. Now, therefore, pursuant to the authority granted to it by 30A MRSA Section 4356, be it hereby ordained by the City Council of the City of Sanford, Maine as follows. Section 1, Moratorium. The city does hereby declare a moratorium on the development of campgrounds associated with the development of any property, including but not limited to the location, operation, or permitting and approval of any and all proposed campgrounds in full or part of a site plan. No person or organization shall develop any campground sites within the city on or after the effective date of this ordinance unless site plan approval was received at least 45 days prior to enactment. During the time this moratorium ordinance is in effect, no officer, official, employee, office, administrative board, or agency of the city shall accept, process, approve, deny, or in any other way act upon any application for any approval, including but not limited to a license, building permit, certificate of occupancy, site plan review, or any other type of land use approval or permit related to the development of a campground. Section 2, pending proceedings. Notwithstanding 1 MRSA Section 302 or any other law to the contrary, this ordinance shall apply to any proposed campground activity for which an application for a building permit, certificate of occupancy, site plan, or any other required approval has been submitted to the city, whether or not a pending proceeding, prior to the enactment of this ordinance. Section 3, conflicts/savings clause. Any provisions of the city ordinances that are inconsistent or conflicting with the provisions of this ordinance are hereby repealed to the extent applicable for the duration of this moratorium. If any section or provision of this ordinance is declared by any court of competent jurisdiction to be invalid, such a declaration shall not invalidate any other section or provision. Section 5, enforcement and violations. This ordinance shall be enforced by the City of Sanford Code Enforcement Officer. Any person who violates this ordinance shall be subject to civil penalties and other remedies as provided in 30A MRS Section 4452, including but not limited to fines and penalties, injunctive relief, and its reasonable attorney's fees and costs in prosecuting any such violations. Each day of any continuing violation shall constitute a separate violation of this ordinance. Section 6, definitions. As used in this ordinance, the following terms have the following meanings. Campground, any area or tract of land to accommodate 2 or more parties in temporary living quarters, including but not limited to tents, recreational vehicles, or other shelters. Section 7, effective date. This ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its adoption and shall remain in full force and effect for a period of 180 days thereafter, unless extended pursuant to law, or until a new and revised set of regulations is adopted by the city, whichever shall first occur.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here to speak for the moratorium? Please come introduce yourself and where you are resident, up at the mic.
You're it.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council and those present. It's nice to see you all again. My name is Brian Dumont. I'm a lifetime resident of Sanford. Been on Sand Pond, as you know, for over 50 years. And I speak in favor of the moratorium because, as I spoke last time in front of this council, I think there are a lot of issues that need to be looked at that do involve ultimately this safety of citizens, but also the comfort of citizens. I talked about the density issues that are not addressed by the current ordinances. For instance, how in the example of the Sand Pond example, where prior to the current existing Hootopia campground, the square footage of water per person around the camp was approximately 3,400 square feet. With Hootopia, that was reduced to about 2,400 square feet. With only phase one of the Patterson proposal, that would be reduced to approximately 1,400. Maybe lower than that. We don't know because there was no provision for how many people could be put into a campground or a campsite. But I want to bring up some other reasons why I would support a moratorium, and that has to do with preserving the main way of life. You know, the main way of life is really what? It's a pristine environment. It's a safe place. It's a place that isn't too crowded, where you can raise a family and, get to know your neighbors, but that you're not continuously inundated with tourists, for instance, right? I lived near Times Square for a time. Let me tell you, I know what it's like to be inundated by tourists. Campgrounds, of course, are mostly for tourists, and that's okay. I've been a tourist, as many of you have as well. I've also been a lifelong camper. You know, I was an Eagle Scout for back when I was young. I did a lot of camping. But what was camping when I was an Eagle Scout all those years ago versus what is glamping today? Ordinances have not begun to address that. I notice in the reading that Maura just did for us, it talks about the definition of a campground. A campground when I was a Scout was you take your tent and your sleeping bag, you find a little patch of land, you throw it down, you spend a night or two. You maybe have a campfire, you might go fishing or something, and then you go home and you leave the place at least as well as it was before you got there. That was camping to us. And, glamping today is what? It's a high-end business that is very profitable, presumably, for those involved. And instead of paying $5 for a little plot of land to throw your tent, you're going to pay $500 to be on a platform with, I don't know what they have, but, somebody's paying it. It's more like a 5-star hotel. It's a serious business. The ordinances do not discriminate. If we look at the intent of what the campground ordinance was, why was it ever allowed in rural residential areas? Why was it also allowed in shoreland zoning? Maybe it was because it wasn't seen as a real business. It was just a place for some kids and maybe a couple of adults to go hang out for a weekend. That is not what glamping is today. And so if that's the case, then why should a very serious and presumably profitable business be allowed the same treatment as what camping was 30 and 50 and 100 years ago? We need to look at that because other businesses are not afforded the same leeway that camping is. So it's time to look at that and time to look at the impact that has on the quality of life that we want in Maine not just today, but for future generations. It's time to do that. It's time to do that in a methodical and well thought and slow way, really. And that's why I support a moratorium. And I want to thank you all for your serious work for all of us. And I look forward to the discussions to come.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak for? Yes, come on up, introduce yourself. And remember to limit it to under 3 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, distinguished panel. My name is Guy Chabot. I live on number 9 Sand Pond Road. I'm one of the abutters for the proposed campground. I've been a resident of Sanford, Maine for 28 years, and we built that house there on that property. So I'm in support of the moratorium. I second everything that was just said. And the only comment I want to make about that is that I think it's a wise decision. It's a prudent decision to kind of think about what this moratorium means, primarily because I look around the room, none of us are probably going to be here in 50 years, right? So we need to really think about what this means for the future generation of the people that live in Sanford, Maine, which, by the way, has a bad rap. I think this is really a great community. I am a transplant. I didn't grow up here, but I have come to love this community. I think it has a lot to offer, a lot of amenities, and I think that that there are good people here in this community. And I think there's disparaging comments that are made about Sanford, Maine, and all that. And my daughter went to the public school here, and she got a great education, and she's very successful today. And a lot of it had to do with the great education that she had in Sanford, Maine, in public schooling. I went to public school. So the point I just want to make is that it's really, I think, important because there's going to be other campgrounds, perhaps, in the area. And this one's a little bit unique because of the footprint. We've talked about that ad nauseum. So I just want to wrap it up by saying that primarily my support of the moratorium is really not for me. It's not about not in my backyard because I can sell my house and move. That's not an issue. It's not about that. It's about what legacy are we going to leave for the future generations of Sanford, Maine, which is a beautiful community, has a lot to offer. And quite frankly, I mean, not to disparage anybody who lives on Sand Pond, but I mean, who would want to camp there? I mean, it's just a little pond. I mean, there's better places to go. So I'm sure it's probably okay, but again, I just think it's something that we need to think about carefully, prudently, and with some thought, because again, it's not really for us. It's for the future generations of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to point out that this, go ahead and sit. I'd like to point out that this isn't just about Sand Pond. This is about all campgrounds that would come into Sanford. So our focus can't be on this one. It's got to be on the whole picture. So just letting you know that's what this moratorium is about. It was just this one campground brought it to the forefront that we didn't have appropriate stuff, and we need to take a step back and do that. So, anyone else to speak for? Come on up. And we've got a couple of people online, too, that's going to speak. You want me to do the, no, you can come down.
Online goes last.
Hello. Hi, my name is Dennis Driscoll. My wife and I together have been Sanford residents for 140 years, and we have lived at Sand Pond since 1986. That's all I'm going to say about Sand Pond. The logic of the proposal is self-explanatory. When I read what you were reading, Deputy Mayor, it made every sense in the world to do all of that stuff. The city needs this, the city needs to know this, the city needs to know that. In support of that document, I urge that you approve the moratorium.
Thank you. Anyone else for? Come on down.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Deputy Mayor and council members for letting me speak. Is Jake still here? Because I'd rather him speak for me if Jake was still here. But I just want to speak
Don't
about
forget
one
to tell
item.
us who you are and where you live.
I'm David Dubois, and I am a resident of Sanford on Sand Pond Road, and I also have a summer home on Sandy Point Road, which is right on Sand Pond. Been there for over half a century, and it makes me quite old, but not as old as all of us here. I'd like to set one prop, if I may, because I want to bring one point home, I think, and if I can use this as a prop, I'm going to put it over here, right? So, about 15. It's about 15 feet. One of the ordinances we have now, which served us really well in the past, but now it's, with the camping the way it's changed, it's kind of getting, maybe needs some tweaking to it, of course. One of the ordinances says that 15 feet is all you need as a buffer between the abutters, and that scares me a lot because I think we're going to find that a developer is going to take advantage of that, and at that 15-point spot, you're going to see a cabin or a park model or a campsite right there. Okay. You're also going to see, since there's no town sewer there, you're going to see a leach field right there. And it's going to be a big leach field because this is commercial. This isn't a homeowner's leach field. This is 2,000 gallons of daily capacity, possibly, or more. There's also going to be a campfire right there, that 15-foot mark. And there's going to be 50 of them because there's probably going to be 50 sites in that park, who knows, in that campground. And that's my concern, and that's why I feel is really a safety issue for all of us as abutters, whether it be in Springvale, whether it be on New Dam Road, or whether it be on Sand Pond. And that's really all I have to say. I just wanted to make a point that I think some improvements can be made, and I'm hoping this kind of brings some of that to light. Thank you. I'll pick up my prop and say
Thank
goodbye.
you. Anyone else to speak for?
Good evening. My name's Andy Sparks. I'm an attorney for the association.
Do you live in
Sand
Sanford?
Pond Association. I do not live in Sanford. Am I still allowed to speak?
Okay. I have to find out the rules.
Yeah,
You can.
I can write. The association is at least 70 members strong and supports the moratorium. I am speaking on behalf of the association just to try to sort of summarize some perspective about moratorias in Maine. Many consider a moratorium to be a drastic measure. Others consider it to be a reflection of some type of planning process failure. It's neither of those. It's a legal tool used to help resolve a problem. It is legislated for that purpose. Maine law provides a roadmap as to how to implement. The city also has legislated it for that purpose and has a moratorium process. And it provides a number of methods to enact one. So a normal planning process in city government and the zoning that goes along with it are generally slow to change for a purpose, as people rely on zoning and the process when planning an investment, such as a business or a house. But sometimes that slow to change leads to unexpected, unanticipated, and unwelcome results. Those results harm the public, individuals, and also the city as a whole. In those circumstances, the law allows the city to put a development application, such as a pending one or one that isn't, on hold in order to consider how to legislate away the unexpected, unanticipated, unwelcome results. That is the purpose of a moratorium. Give time to the planning process and to determine what changes are necessary to avoid the unanticipated, unexpected, and unwelcome. It is not a drastic measure. It's not an unsurprising measure. It is meant for a purpose, and you all certainly are enacting it for that purpose. In this particular instance, that is the city of Sanford and camping, as everyone's talked about, camping has undergone enormous changes. Who would have anticipated where we would be today with camping? And I Obviously, it's said well enough that I don't need to sort of stress the various pieces from, glamping to year-round tents. Unfortunately, we listened to the homeless circumstances earlier today, and did we ever think that tenting would come to a year-round problem for those less fortunate? But the ordinance doesn't sort of take care of those issues, and I think it needs to, and I think you all are making the right decision to enact this and use this tool. Just to summarize, other cities and towns are also using this tool. You are not alone. The town of Wayne, Maine just passed a moratorium for the purpose of rewriting their campground ordinance, with a pending application actually set for final hearing soon after the passing. The city of South Portland is racing towards redrafting their ordinance out of similar concerns. Columbia Falls, Maine has a new proposed zoning ordinance which separates campground, campsite, resorts, glamping. Your fellow towns and cities are all dealing with the same thing. I would encourage you to vote yes for the moratorium and to take a breath, set your ordinances correctly as you see them and as the public wishes for them. We're not necessarily advocating at this time for anything. We want the process to go on and to people to be heard, and you can choose to accept it or reject it at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else present who would like to speak for? And we have two people online with their hands up, and I'm going to assume, Holly, are you speaking for? Holly, we can't hear you.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Thank you very much, Madam. Madam Mayor, City Council, my name is Holly Bennett, and I'm a teacher and a year-round Sanford resident of 23 years. I am also a board member on the San Pond Association, and I am in favor of the retroactive moratorium on campgrounds. For reference, I live at the proposed campground entrance, which is at 91 Country Club 2 Road. I have a few supporting points that I'd like to make. Firstly, regarding the setbacks, coverage, and density. I feel, for all the reasons that Andy Sparks and Brian have talked about earlier, that we do need to review our ordinances in order to make sure the safety of our current neighborhood is maintained. His proposed campground has a trailer turnaround quite literally inches from the corner of my property, which would drastically alter the nature of my property, and with the coming and going of these large RVs would create a drastic change. With this moratorium, we need to define setbacks, which I believe are inadequately defined, and appropriately account for the rural nature of the zone in which we live. Guy had a lot to say about the future that we leave for our children. And if we don't address these current conditions, the rural nature of this zone will be drastically changed. The setback should protect our neighbors and this rural nature if this campground is allowed to go through. While certainly we can all agree that campgrounds are allowed in the rural residential area, does this mean that any and all types of campgrounds are allowed? Is it okay to densely pack in model park RVs and place roads and turnarounds quite literally within inches of a neighbor's property? Are our setbacks adequate to protect this rural nature? Should we have a density restriction? How many campgrounds should be allowed within a few square miles? My second main point is regarding the definition of campgrounds and what, in fact, are model park RVs and should they be included. We need to address our outdated version before more damage is done to the land. In Mr. Patterson's recently posted video, he mentioned that other towns have ordinances for park model RVs. As an example, town he listed was in Wells, Maine. If you look at any of these campgrounds, such as Seaview or Summer Hill, they utilize these park model RVs and even promote them for sale as homes and not RVs. He suggested that an ideal time frame for residency for these RVs are 180 days. That's 6 months of residency. These are permanent structures with porches and decks and gardens, all within 15 feet of each other, which David so kindly showed us earlier. There is nothing in our current ordinances to protect us from building this kind of community in the rural residential zone. There is nothing preventing Mr. Patterson from building this or other developers in any campground because of the way that our campground is defined. If Mr. Patterson chooses to sell his campground, again, a different developer could come in and take advantage of our definition. These park model RV campgrounds are far different than what we would expect in a traditional campground. They are essentially tiny homes packed together. Our current definition currently allows skirting around our zoning and enables campgrounds to pack in as many RVs close together. If this model RV is allowed to go through, the impacts to the rural residential zone will be changed forever and cannot be reclaimed. The population density and the environmental impact due to this lack of zoning and definition of campgrounds reinforces the need for a moratorium and specific definitions to protect the neighborhood environment. The rural residential zone needs to be protected from just becoming another dense residential zone. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe Diane Conley, are you online? And are you speaking for?
I'm speaking for with just a few other comments, if I may, Madam Mayor. My name is Diane Conley. I live in Springville. Before I was transplanted to the United States, I used to go camping in a place called Algonquin Provincial Park, a huge place. They stopped doing year-round camping because of these environmental impacts, and they closed off a lot of campgrounds. I was one of those diehard people that pitched a tent in the middle of nowhere, and I went winter camping. They brought in yurts, and it got overcrowded. We started having problems. Bears started being shot because people were feeding them. You know it, name it. But I would like to draw your attention to the other side of the city. I'd like to draw your attention down off of New Dam and the new campground that was approved recently by the planning department. What impacts is that campground over there going to have that we didn't put the moratorium in over there on Estes Lake? I would like to also call out someone that passed away recently, Mr. Dana Peterson, who was the head of the Bonnie Bake Lake Association. If he were with us today, he would be in here like Flint talking about this and all the impacts that we're going to have that's going to impact the Bonnie
Diane,
Bake.
you can't, in a hearing, you can't talk for somebody else, put words in their mouth.
That's fine.
So just talk about yourself.
I'm just saying, but there's a lot of environmental impacts that are going to happen. My parents went what I call luxury camping with 45-foot park models. Okay? You can put skirts around them, you can take the tires off, whatever, and you can make them permanent. These are things that need to be discussed, as well as what Mr. Dumont said about being 15 feet away from you. So I would thank you for putting the moratorium in place because there's a lot to be discussed, including what the Sand Pond Lake environmental levels are now if we have those readings from codes. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Diane. Anyone else for? Seeing as no hands, let's move to anyone speaking against.
Good evening, members of the council, Madam Mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor, Mr. City Manager. My name is Michael Traister. My last name is spelled Traister. I am not a city resident. I am an attorney and partner with the firm Murray, Plum & Murray in Portland, and I represent Michael and Bonnie Patterson. And the Pattersons, along with their business, Sand Pond Shores LLC. The Pattersons asked me to attend tonight's council meeting to assist them in addressing the proposed moratorium. And of course, to state the obvious, while I understand there may be larger issues that this moratorium and any potential change of zoning might impact, certainly the impetus for the moratorium proposal is, of course, the Pattersons' proposed campground on Sand Pond. And so, as you might imagine, the Pattersons are not in favor of the moratorium, and I want to explain why. And I really want to just make 4 what I'd call general kind of macro level points. The first is the notion of fair play. The city has rules. Those rules are, of course, encapsulated and set forth in the city's ordinances, specifically including, among other things, the shoreline zone ordinance as well as the site plan review ordinance. And when the city puts those rules out to the public, the understanding is that those rules, can be relied upon. And that's what the Pattersons have done. They have relied in good faith on the city's published rules, on the ordinances. And they have, as I think you can understand, invested great time and very substantial money in their project in reliance on those rules. Among other things, they've retained a very experienced and competent project engineer, Steve Bushy, who's been engaging with the city's site plan review committee. They have an outside consultant, an expert in campgrounds, assisting them with this project. And they've acted in good faith and are cooperating and trying to work collaboratively with the city and its staff. By imposing a retroactive moratorium, my colleague, Mr. Sparks, characterized that as not a drastic measure. I would respectfully disagree. The norm is that ordinances, changes in zoning are forward-looking, are prospective. They are not typically retroactive. And by proposing a retroactive moratorium, which would, of course, put the Pattersons' pending application. They do have a complete application that's in front of the Site Plan Review Committee at the moment. That would, of course, put that on hold. You're really pulling the rug out from the Pattersons, and that's distressing to them, and I think I have to make that point to the council on their behalf. Again, a lot of time and money has already been invested. But it's not only problematic for the Pattersons, and that brings me to my second point. And the second point is precedent, policy, and practice here in the city of Sanford. And I would urge the council to very seriously consider what kind of precedent and practice imposing a retroactive moratorium sends out to the business community specifically, but the community at large. And what I'm getting at is business needs stability. Business needs predictability. What business does not like and investment does not like is unpredictability, uncertainty. And there's nothing more that creates more unpredictability and uncertainty than a retroactive moratorium and a retroactive application of the rules. And so again, I'd ask the council to very seriously consider what kind of message that's sending out to the business community, or would send out to the business community and the community at large. The third point I want to make is we think that the moratorium is entirely premature. And the reason I say that is the Pattersons are at the very beginning of the site plan review process. They're working collaboratively with city staff through their project engineer, Mr. Bushy. They have engaged with the neighbors. It's my understanding that there seems to be some disinformation floating around in the community that the Pattersons have refused or been unwilling to engage with the neighbors and other owners on and near Sand Pond. The Pattersons disagree with that. Mr. Bushy, to my understanding, has held at least 2 meetings with those in and around Sand Pond to discuss the project, to take their input and incorporate that to the extent possible into the project and into the review process with the Site Plan Review Committee and ultimately the Planning Board. I'd also like the council to understand that I have myself engaged with Mr. Sparks, the Lake Association's attorney, and we are going to be engaging in a dialogue and a discussion as to what whether agreements can be made to address the concerns of those in and around Sand Pond. And some of the things that the Pattersons, so are willing to consider would include extensive privacy fencing, limits on the number of consecutive days stayed at the campground, and things of that nature. So there are things that can be done, but if you enact a retroactive moratorium, you're really pulling the rug out from that entire sort of discussion and negotiation. And the last point I want to make has to do with the legal standard that applies to the moratorium proposal. Under state law, the council has some authority, certainly, to enact a moratorium. However, it's not unlimited authority. It's not unlimited discretion. The council, in order to enact a moratorium, whether retroactive or not, in this case retroactive, must find, based on actual facts, that either public services will be overburdened or overwhelmed, or that serious public harm will result if the moratorium is not enacted. I don't think there's a serious argument to be made that public services will be overburdened or overwhelmed. I think what the council needs to wrestle with is there serious public harm that would result if the moratorium, the retroactive moratorium, is not enacted? And we would respectfully submit no. I think what you're hearing are general concerns, expressions of concern, claims, assertions about negative impact on the lake quality, and the environmental impact on the lake. However, to our knowledge, there are no such impacts. The Pattersons and Mr. Bushy have been engaging with DEP. There is a DEP stormwater management permit that is required. They are going through the process. It's my understanding that while that process is not complete, the DEP has indicated that there are no concerns at the moment, and that it's likely the permit will be issued. And so we would ask, what impacts, what environmental impacts? We're hearing things tonight, for example, about concerns about tourists, about the main way of life, things of that nature. I would respectfully submit that those types of concerns, while certainly understandable for abutters, do not rise to the level of serious public harm as contemplated and required by state law to enact a moratorium. I would also like the council to understand that DEP has indicated there are no wetlands issues.
Excuse me, we do not have DEP here, nor
Yes.
do we have their documents in front of us. So don't keep referring to DEP, because they're not here.
Okay, yes, ma'am. The point is, what serious public harm? We hear concerns about setbacks. We hear concerns about privacy. We can hear concerns about use of the lake. But those are what I would respectfully submit, the types of concerns that are often expressed by neighbors when a development proposal is on the table. And that's why we have the planning board process. We have site plan ordinance. We have a shoreline zone ordinance. There are protections already built into the town's rules and enable those types of things to be addressed. So we'd ask the council respectfully to give serious consideration as to whether there really is substantial public harm as opposed to private concerns. We would submit there is not, and we would encourage the council to ultimately vote not to enact the moratorium, and we thank the council very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak against the moratorium? Yeah, they go last.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members, for the opportunity to come speak with you again. And I also appreciate those of you who've been willing to speak with me to get some facts from my side, so I really appreciate that. It appears the biggest issue the council and our neighbors are concerned about, or many of them, is the campground polluting the pond and turning it into a nasty mess. There is some misinformation floating around, and I hope to address that tonight. Even though the code enforcement officer has advised the council to let the Department of Environmental Protection, or DEP, handle the issue of the pond, I know it's still a huge underlying concern. I've talked to the DEP, so I can't share with you what they said. But I will let you know what I've read online, and you're welcome to contact the experts, and I'm very confident you'll hear the same thing. The clear cutting at the pond's edge, the way the neighbors have done to create a beach or a better view of the pond, and their septic systems that are less than 100 feet from the water's edge and the variances that they've needed, is what is going to destroy the pond.
Could you hold on one moment, please? I need to get legal opinion.
Okay.
Just to the moratorium.
Mike? Go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I've lived on Siddle Road with 2 other full-time residents for over 20 years, and all the other properties on the road are used for a few days or maybe a few months by mostly owners who aren't even Sanford residents. How are they helping the town of Sanford other than property taxes? If you watch our YouTube videos, which I put up there to educate the council and the greater Sanford community and my neighbors, we don't have beachfront. We have 560 feet for our campers can't hang out there. There is going to be no clearing in our 560 feet frontage. It's going to stay heavily vegetated. We aren't going to destroy it the way the neighbors have. We just want the existing setbacks so that the RV sites can see the water through the trees. We have reached out to the neighbors on 3 occasions to discuss the project. We had 2 meetings. The third time I reached out to join their association to share information that they told me to talk to their lawyer. They have never reached out to us once to talk. We just want the existing setbacks so the RV sites can see the trees, see the water through the trees. And more misinformation is about we're staying 15 feet back. We're not. Read what we put out. We're staying 40 feet back from the neighbors. With buffers, we've bought heavy equipment to plant additional trees. We've cut nothing. And we've put in fences, mostly because over half of the neighbors were encroaching on our property with trash. The sites that we're putting in for the campground, they're not going to be packed in. These are some of the largest campsites in the state. The minimum size is 1,000 square feet. Ours are over 4,000. I think that Sanford can benefit from more businesses that will attract tourists that will otherwise vacation in Wells, Kennebunk, or Ogunquit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Can you see that person's name that's on? Is there anybody else here who wants to speak against the moratorium? I have a person online. Are you speaking against the moratorium? Kathleen?
I'm speaking against the moratorium, correct?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Kathleen Walsh, and I am a consultant in outdoor hospitality. I've been building RV parks, campgrounds, glamping resorts for about 30 years.
Are you a resident of Sanford?
I am not. I am but I have done numerous projects in the state of Maine.
Are you representing Mike's LLC? He's
I
shaking
am
his head yes. Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
Just clarifying.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. So one of the things I want to point out is that many of the fears that the residents are expressing regarding the environment simply do not come to pass in RV parks, campgrounds, glamping resorts. One of the reasons outdoor hospitality guests love outdoor hospitality is because they love the environment. They like vacationing in it and they like taking care of it. Quite frankly, if we would come to the pond or any location in the US and destroy the environment, we will have quickly destroyed the goose that's laying our golden egg. Campers don't want to camp on polluted waters, polluted lakes, areas that are trashed. Camping has changed. I will agree with the gentleman who stated that. I've been in it for 30 years. Modern camping is very environmentally sensitive. Back in the old day, we had pit toilets, we had no recycling, we had gray water that could hit the ground. Camping was environmentally unfriendly a long time ago. That's changed drastically and specifically with this project. As Mr. Patterson stated, he's gone above and beyond the current setback from 15 feet to 40 feet. Maine allows campsites to be 1,000 square feet. His are 4,000 square feet. He is planning on putting in a state-of-the-art treatment system for the wastewater. So he's gone above and beyond in this particular project. Tourists seem to be a big concern, but in my mind, coming from the state of Maryland and now living in Florida, I've always known Maine as vacation land. That is your motto, at least that's what's on the license plate. And so tourists like coming to Maine and enjoying your natural resources there. So I want to put a lot of these fears to rest. Park model units are indeed RVs. They are not permanent structures. I have them in hurricane-prone areas. I have to have them out of the park in 15 minutes in an evacuation. So this is not affordable housing. This is not long-term residency. This is a campground and a glamping resort. And the environment is absolutely one of our biggest concerns to always take care of it. I believe that another person that's going to speak tonight is my business partner, Michael Hannon, and I thank you for your time and listening to my comments.
Oh, anyone else to speak against? Yes. I can't see your name, sir.
Michael Hannon. Have you called on me?
Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Thank you. I am Kathleen's business partner that she referenced, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. I work with Kathleen. We are consulting with Michael and Bonnie, and Michael and Bonnie have asked me just to speak a little bit about my involvement with Kathleen. I'm an attorney, but don't hold that against me. And since we've moved to Southwest Florida, I've gotten involved doing pro bono work for environmentalists who are interested in calling out the polluters, and we have many of them in Southwest Florida, particularly doing pro bono work to protect the waters of the Caloosahatchee River and the waters off the coast of the city of Cape Coral and the environs there. And when Kathleen's clients have issues with the environment, I look and weigh in on those as well. And the experience that I'd like to just share with you all is that when I see people getting into a contest over the environment, and particularly in other states, not necessarily Maine, where people lawyer up as they use the expression, that's a negative. And it's a negative because the democratic process that I see in Maine and New England states in particular allows the folks that are neighbors of Michael and Bonnie to dialogue with them about things that they can do and add to their park that wouldn't be required under the law or wouldn't be required by the zoning board. And sometimes that's the better approach to take, particularly within the framework of your Board of Zoning. This is not going to be done outside the existing setbacks and rules regarding campgrounds. So Kathleen is correct. The state of the art is much more protective of the environment than a home development might be. Having more impervious surfaces is not going to help the lake, help the pond. Quite frankly, of the many different uses, and I think I'm told that there are 2 or 3 pages of uses that Michael and Bonnie could make of their property there. The very best one, as far as the environment is concerned, and for me, if I were a neighbor, is to have a campground with the restrictions that are currently in place and the additional restrictions that Bonnie and Michael are willing to add that they're not required to add during a dialogue with neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I think that's all the hands.
I'm speaking for.
No, we've already
against
done.
the moratorium.
We've already done the 4.
Against the moratorium.
You're speaking against the moratorium?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what is your name?
My name's Lee Talevi, and I was a graduate of Sanford High School, but I own and developed campgrounds in a neighboring town in Wells.
And do you live in Sanford?
No, I do not.
And are you in any way representing Mike or his wife?
No. I mean, he's spoken to me about
Okay, this
what he's
this
doing.
is a hearing for Sanford people, Sanford Springvale. So thank you for doing that, but where you're not representing him, we let the people who represent him speak. So thank you.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So I think that is it. So I don't see anything. Oh, okay. I see you now. And Kathleen, do you still have your hand up or you just left it up? I think she must have just
I
left it.
apologize. I will take it down.
Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead. Bonnie, it's Bonnie, right?
Yes. Hi, I'm Bonnie Patterson. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I am one of the owners of the proposed campground on Sand Pond. I'd like you to consider 3 points as you move forward. First, there are already several year-round campgrounds in the state of Maine. They have stay restrictions of 180 days. They do not allow guests to claim residency. They do not allow children to be enrolled in school. Secondly, regarding the pond ecology, setback changes would likely impact the viability of the project. We ask that you consider privacy borders such as fencing and shrubbery. We've already got significant fencing around the majority of the property in a ranch rail perspective, but are willing to add shrubbery to give the neighbors more privacy. And thirdly, industry reports show that Maine's annual economic impact from campgrounds is $611 million. A typical family of 4 spends about $200 a day outside of the campground in our local community. So I did some rough math. Our proposed project, which would have 39 sites, would add to that number to the tune of $1.2 million annually for Sanford businesses. Those businesses include restaurants, shopping, movie theaters, bowling, golf courses. So as you move forward, I urge you to please consider these 3 points. I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. All right, I think we finally come to the end of that. So seeing as there are no others, I declare this public hearing closed. All right, now to consent agenda. And typically, I would just approve this, but I think there's some advertising that could go on here under the consent agenda. This is an off-premise license application from Cruisin' Infusion on May, keep the date in mind, May 18th, 2024, at Memorial Gym for the Chocolate Spectacular benefit. And in case you don't know, Memorial Gym is no longer part of our school system. It belongs to the city, so they can serve certain alcoholic beverages there. So I'm assuming that's what this is all about. All right, so that might entice people to even go more. Let me see, rum and chocolate. I think somebody very famous told me that that was a good combination. Yeah. Oh, no, bourbon. It was bourbon. Bourbon and chocolate. So there you go. So, seeing as there's no concern about this, I approve the consent agenda. All right, moving on to new business. In order to adopt a proposed ordinance establishing a moratorium on the construction of campgrounds for 180 days pursuant to Title 30A, Section 4356, in order to allow time for examining an amendment of regulations pursuant to design standards that have potential to constitute a danger to public health and welfare. Is there any questions?
Just clarification, that it's a first read.
Right, it says it at the bottom. Yeah. So this item must be read on 2 separate occasions. This is the first read. All right, Maura?
Okay, this is the first read. I'm just going to start with, thank you, everybody, for speaking. I'm sure everybody's going to be a little bit disappointed by what I'm about to say, because I've said this to some. This is not an attempt to prevent a campground, I'm sorry to say, and I think a lot of the neighbors do understand that. This is also, I read through this as some people were speaking, we're not talking about environmental issues. So all that time spent on environmental issues, we understand that's the DEP's purview, and that there are shoreland zoning in place for that. We're literally talking about the fact that our campground ordinances are out of date, campgrounds have changed, and we don't want to set up a situation where we're allowing somebody to use campground rules to bring in year-round residential uses. So we want to make sure that it's very clear in the ordinance. If you choose to go year-round, you're going to have a little bit of different standards here. But if you choose to be a true campground, you know, and I'm hoping that's the way the planning board is going to look at it. They will be the first ones, if this moratorium passes, they'll be the first ones to look at it. So again, we're not up here trying to prevent a campground. And there are a couple in play right now. So I know Sam Pond was the focus of this evening's discussion, but I truly believe a moratorium is good for the community so that we have better campground development in light of the modernization of camping and what we're seeing happening with camping today. So that's my take on it. I fully support this moratorium. Again, we're not taking over the DEPs here. We are talking literally about making sure that neighbors have what is, you know, get what they believe a true campground is, and if not, different standards are in place so that they are also protected from other types of uses that might be sheltered under the name of a campground. So that's kind of where I am on this, and I look forward to hearing from my fellow counselors. Thank you.
Any other comments? Pete?
Yeah, I dug into a lot of this, like we talked about, the DEP, I called the mayor. So we're not really trying to invent the wheel. Regarding Sand Pond, I did call the DEP with the permission of the mayor. And there is no mathematical equation for a human in a body of water unless you're buying a swimming pool. So I asked them directly, are we going to be responsible for other bodies of water in Maine? Are we going to, in our area? And he goes, you won't get anything if the DEP doesn't sign off on it because these Fish and Games has already signed off on it. So if somebody comes to us with this, that's a lot easier for us to make a decision. For the moratorium, I know I misspoke, we do have to look at everything. It's an old ordinance. And again, personally, I'm not against campgrounds. So there's no anti-this. I'm for the borders and their respect, and I'm for everybody that you're putting in. So we do need some time to make this up to date so it's fair for everybody and for future developers. So that's where I am. So.
Thank you, Pete. Bob, did you have a comment?
No, I mean, you know, Pete said a lot of the things that I was going to say, but I think the moratorium is justified just because things are out of alignment now. I mean, and we need to get things aligned back up. Again, I would agree with what Moore is saying, that I don't think the intention here on behalf of the council, certainly not on me, is to prevent a campground anywhere. I think they can have benefits, financial benefits and just community benefits, benefits to the community, et cetera. So I just think we need to take a step back and take a look at this. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Jonathan?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just mirror some of the previous comments, but I think we need to have a little more time to review the current ordinances, and I was just looking through the ordinance a little bit more, and I was seeing things that it just wouldn't work the way it is with what's there, so some changes would need to be made regardless. So I think this is a good step forward to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Okay, thank you. Ann?
My question is for our city manager in regards to the completed legal review, Steve, that's been done. Was that review specific to the language of the moratorium, or was there any piece that was addressed related to that public harm, serious public harm definition?
Yeah, so the legal analysis was done by Phil Saucier, Bernstein Shore, been serving in that capacity as a municipal attorney in land use regulation for quite some substantial period of time. I drafted the moratorium, sent that over to Phil for legal review. He made some minor changes to that and approved it as moving forward. There was comments here earlier this evening relevant to the particular statute, 30A, Section 4356, moratoria, that it was discussed about overburden of public facilities and that this wouldn't be an issue because it's not on public facilities. I find that under Section 4356 1B, not 1A, but 1B, specifically states because the application of existing comprehensive plans, land use ordinances or regulations or other applicable laws, if any, is inadequate to prevent serious public harm from residential, commercial, or industrial development in the affected geographic area. It is subsection 1B that was being relied on in the drafting of the moratorium pursuant to the council calling out the setbacks, the seasonality, and other aspects.
Thank you,
yes,
Steve.
it was reviewed for that particular reason. Also looking at the retroactivity, the retrospective of it, that was reviewed because there is great sensitivity to that in the courts as far as the appropriate application, and that passed the legal review on that. The specific language was in there for the last campground having been received their site plan greater than 45 days, and the 45 days is a legal reference as far as the ability to call back on on permits that have been approved. So all of that was taken into consideration in the drafting of the ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nate?
Steve just gave us the legal background, so I won't try to be too much of a lawyer here and talk about things, but...
Oh, come on, we'd like to make fun of you with this.
Okay, well, I'll do a little bit. A lot of what I heard today, I think, is something that's being handled by both parties here, is that they've both hired an attorney to discuss issues that may result in, what we call private nuisance or something that's, affects that particular organization. So I applaud both sides for hiring attorneys to talk through. I know people always make those jokes about attorneys. We just had one here that said, don't hold it against me. This is why we have them. So another reason why I bring this up is because it's hard to talk about specific organizations when you're talking about a moratorium, because that's not what they're designed for. Because there are discussions that go back and forth, and so it's hard to be specific because there are certain legal standards we have to make. I think everyone here is on board with the fact that our laws are not up to date. I don't think there's been any contesting about that. The next question then becomes, is there a serious public harm? I think there's been communicated through multiple parties that there's a harm that's floating around. Is it serious? That's a different story. And if we're going specifically with the lead organization of the night, the Patterson Campground, there's a lot of variables there where I don't know if there is serious public harm. But that's why we don't look at specifics. We look at the general laws, and we see that our laws, our ordinances that are in place can cause a serious public harm as it relates to using these year-round. And again, it was cited by some people here that there are campgrounds that do run all year round, but I'm sure there's some regulations, local ordinances that regulate why that's allowed. So I think, again, we'll have a second reading on this, further discussion on it, but I think that's where I have to look at. So I think based off of that, I think I would be in support of the moratorium.
Okay.
As what we've heard so far.
All right, thank you. So that was the end of the first reading, so we'll go on to the next. And for those of you in the audience are wondering, we have to read these twice, and at our next meeting will be the second reading. In 2 weeks. Pardon?
I said.
And the vote.
And vote.
And a vote
next
at that
meeting.
point. Okay? All right, so the next item under new business is in order to create the position of Assistant City Manager within the Administration Department pursuant to Chapter Section 205.3 as a grade 17 within the wage classification system, and to be responsible for directing various citywide departmental activities and operations, assisting in providing administrative guidance to executive staff, and act for the city manager in his or her absence and perform all other work as required. This item must be read on 2 separate occasions. This is the first reading. So Steve, do we need to make it? This is where you want us to kind of make, there was a request that you had.
Yes, so I stated all of the process under the public hearing piece and
Yeah.
the actions that the council's already taken. The step that's outside of that, historically, I would wait until the second read, it's approved and such, and then post the position. I'm asking to be able to post 2 weeks early. If you don't foresee that there's any issue that this won't pass the second read and move forward as presented. That gives us another 2 weeks to get at the position to try
Get it
and entice
advertised.
somebody
Yep.
in.
Does anybody see any possibility that under our second reading, we wouldn't approve this, so that Steve can then go ahead and advertise? Jonathan?
I just wanted to comment for people listening in that this has had a lot of discussion, and everyone's in agreement that this is a needed position, so I don't foresee any issues at the council level. So,
Thank you, Jonathan. Everyone else in agreement? All right, so I think we're, so you go ahead, Steve. All right, and in order to approve a request for the DMOT overlimit permit for construction on a project pursuant to 29-A MRS Section 2382-7, and to authorize the city manager to sign on behalf of the city council.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Ann?
I would second that.
All those in favor? Thank you.
This is fairly standard procedure.
All right, keep going. In order to discuss potential changes to the city council subcommittee schedule for July and August subcommittees, and we had a concern in the summertime. Sometimes we just need time off, and sometimes the employees need time off, and it's sometimes can be very hard to get subcommittees together. So it was a suggestion that maybe we needed to discuss, are they needed for July and August? And so it's open for discussion. So, Maura?
So you and I had a discussion with Steve when we set the agenda. We think certain subcommittees will have to meet because of their, like property, zoning, because we have some things before it, fire station, because we're trying to get to a vote. There was one more. Solid waste, because we're in the middle of contract. But when it's, so I think we wanted to set the standard that we're not going to meet for updates and reports. We're going to meet for action items that need to move along the process. And I just welcome any feedback on that.
Pete?
So you're talking about July and August?
Only, and so 2 meetings.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Ann?
And I would just share that that was exactly my intent when I brought it up kind of as a question for discussion was if it is not necessary to meet, then let's enjoy a little bit of extra summertime. I certainly would always, if any need arose to meet for public safety or property subcommittee, I would of course jump at that need, so.
And I think we also wanted to stress that if there's something that does come up, please feel free to let Maura or myself know, and we will find somebody to fill in your slot. Like if any of you say, you know, I can't go to that, I want to be out of town, or like for some of us who own a camp like Bob, who likes to spend his whole summer at the lake, if he can't make it in.
With horrific Wi-Fi.
And his Wi-Fi goes in and out, in and out.
I bought a new computer, so that.
All right.
Should take care of it.
Excellent. Excellent.
I got Breeze Line out there, so I should be okay
Oh, you
with
should
my
be
internet
fine.
connection. Pun intended. Yeah, no, I was actually gonna say that really for council members, the work to attend the subcommittee meeting is not a lot because they are all by Zoom. So even if I'm out at the lake and it's a beautiful day, I can just Zoom in literally and attend the
clever.
meeting. So that's not that big a deal. It's the work for the organization. It's the work for Steve and the other administrators to put those meetings together. I think that if we can give them a break, that might be good.
Okay.
That
thank
was
you.
said like a true retired person.
Any other comments about that?
And I'm getting more retired every day.
Okay, moving right along. Well, and Steve, that would also go for any of the employees, you know, if it becomes a burden that you'll find the cluster of them have to have that 1 week off, you know, there's no problem with canceling.
Madam Mayor, the next one's going to make everybody happy.
Yes, the next one will be. All those citizens out there, you need to know this. In order to declare Sunday, write this down, June 30th, 2024, Household Hazard Waste Cleanup Day to be held 9 a.m. to 12 noon at the Sanford Transfer Station located at 81 Ruston Street in Sanford. And Matt, have you been working on what we can dump and what we can't dump?
I'm going to make a motion to approve before Matt speaks.
Okay, and can I have a second? Okay,
Go, Matt.
go ahead.
Great. Thank you. So at last month's Solid Waste Subcommittee, we were dealing with some issues, and the city manager gave me directive to start looking at firms to help Sanford host a household hazardous waste collection day. I contacted 3 leading candidates as recommended by Maine DEP. One of them told me that it took about 6 months to schedule, and they couldn't do anything. Didn't hear back from the other 2. Thought the issue was dead. And then a couple weeks ago, Environmental Projects out of Lewiston reached out and said that they did have a couple dates available. One was Father's Day, which Larissa Ricketts pointed out very quickly would not work very well. And then
Thank you, Larissa.
this Sunday, June 30th, was an alternate date that they had available. But we do have some real issues to discuss. I've been getting nothing but positive feedback from hosting one of these events locally. It seems like they're well overdue. So the logistics are that Sanford would pay $1,850 set up as a fee to EPI to get them to show up. They would bring 6 to 8 employees. Sanford would be responsible for providing 2 to 3 employees. And then, so EPI would charge the city $31.50 for each unit of waste collected. So the unit of waste is a variable that is a little bit tough to define. So it's I believe it was either 5 gallons of waste, 20 pounds, or, you know, depending on the exotic waste it is, that they'll make a determination basically at the gate. And charge the city accordingly. The city has an opportunity to basically subsidize this cost and take some of that responsibility away from the resident. So in speaking with the city manager, it sounds like, you know, we have some operations and maintenance money left over, going to be unrealized before the end of the fiscal year. So we have, a potential budget, probably somewhere in the 5-figure category. I don't want to speak for Steve, but, and then it comes down to how much does the city want to subsidize the residents. So kind of on one side of the spectrum, we want to help the resident out and give them, some relief from the expense of throwing this hazardous material or getting this hazardous material taken care of responsibly. On the other end of the spectrum, we don't want to make it so, easy or free that we get inundated by, potentially materials from outside the community. So looking to the council to, both approve a budget and set, a fee for residents for this unit of waste, basically. The city at that point, once EPI would evaluate the load and say how many units is the load, the city would then, charge the set fee. There is a sliding scale, obviously if you show up with a, small can of half-used spray paint, that's not going to be a full unit of hazardous waste. Oh, by the way, paint's a bad example because paint is free. So Jordan Wilson, communications director, has put together this attached flyer to kind of advertise it, and wanted to put it to you to see what our appetite is for this event.
And Matt, is that going to be online someplace so residents could easily find that? What would it be under?
Yes, we're going to post it all over the city's webpage. We talked about putting advertisements up on the changeable message sign in front of the transfer station, on the bulletin board in front of City Hall, and we've also been talking about creating a banner that would be hung on the tennis courts chain link fence along Main Street.
All right, thank you.
And posting on Facebook.
Jonathan?
So I guess a couple questions. One is, why Sunday? Especially Sunday morning, because there's a lot of people that go to church and would not be able to participate. So this seems like it would be kind of excluding a large portion of the community.
Wasn't this because there's only so many days open that you could choose?
Yeah, a lot of their days are already filled up. That company that booked 6 months ahead of time, they said they didn't have any openings. These guys had Sundays available. That was kind of their sweet spot, and I think that might be open because of that very reason, Councilor.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
So follow-up question, could it be moved to the afternoon instead of morning?
Matt, did you hear
I
that?
could certainly ask that question.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, we had a first and a second. All those in favor? Yeah, we had a first and a second.
Sorry, I thought we had to set a budget as part of the.
Do we have to set a budget, or is this?
I thought he was looking for a dollar value that people had to pay per unit. Did I misunderstand that?
Well, is he recommending something?
It wasn't part of this
21 to
motion,
30.
or part of this.
It's not in the
Does he have a recommendation? Matt, do you have a recommendation for a number?
I think, a budget of $10,000 and $20 a unit subsidy would get 500 units of hazardous waste off the streets. That would leave the resident, basically responsible for $10. Well, try to make it round numbers. So, try to do $10 a unit or $20 a unit, I think would be fairly easy to calculate and collect.
So we already had a motion, a first and a second, so should we make an amendment to that or have a total separate vote?
I'll do a friendly amendment to set the price. We're being charged $31.50 a unit.
Yes.
I think we should do 20 per unit and subsidize the rest, which would be a budget of 10,000, you said?
Yeah, $10,000. If the city was contributing $20 a unit, we would do 500 units.
Okay.
So I think the resident should be $20 per unit. It takes a lot to get up to, a unit is 5 gallons. Takes a lot
Yeah.
to get up to that, so I think a lot of them will be less than $20. So I think that's perfectly reasonable. I find that just the convenience is worth $20. I don't know how you guys feel. And then we would subsidize the $11.50 a unit.
Okay,
Yeah, that would get us up to 870 units disposed of.
so is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Do I
That's
have
my
a s-
adjusted motion.
Adjusted, do I have a second on the?
$10,000 budget.
Yeah. So Pete,
Yep. I second.
now do I have to take a vote on the first thing plus the second, or?
Vote on the amendment, and then if the amendment
Okay.
Who
passes.
seconded my first amendment?
Did you second it? Oh,
I just seconded.
He's seconding the same amendment, so just do it once.
Okay.
We adjusted our motion.
All right. All those in favor of both things, there, let Larissa figure it out.
We all know what we mean.
Okay, the next one, in order to appoint the list of ballot clerks as required by MRSA 21-A, Chapter 7, Section 503-A.3, no later than May 1st of each general election year to serve at each voting place during the time the polls are open and as counters after the polls close. Okay, we are a little late on this. Is Sue, do we need her, or do we just need to vote? Anybody have any questions of Sue? Okay, can I have a motion, please?
So moved. Oh, yeah, so moved.
Jonathan? Okay. So all those in favor? There we go. And she had the list of everybody in your packets, if you remember seeing that. Okay, in order to authorize an abatement of outstanding 2023 real estate taxes for properties identified as tax map R15, Lot 24A, located at 1298 Main Street in Sanford, due to the city's purchase this property after April 1st, 2023.
This is Courtney Cleaners, correct?
Yes, I
So
can.
basically, we're abating our own
Aaron's
taxes.
not here? Well, you're not, yeah, so am I covering it? Okay, all right, so I'll cover this. So, no, you can't abate, so you don't have the legal authority to abate for this reason. So I went through that with Ben Thompson today. You do have the authority to write this off as uncollectible, and that's what the proper request should be from our treasurer. So the reason the taxes weren't paid was the due date for the assessment was April 1st. The city took possession of the property by purchase and sales, I think 4 or 5 days later. Therefore, the tax was there. It was never prorated between buyer and seller and such under that. So at this point in time, it's deemed as being uncollectible. The city owns that at this point in time. It's no longer taxable. So the treasurer is seeking authority to write that off.
Okay, so do I have a motion for that, to write it off? Second? There, all those in favor? There we go. Okay, in order to receive from the city treasurer tax-acquired property due to the non-payment of 2021, 2022 real estate tax liens, and I think there was several on that list. And who's doing this one?
I can cover this as well. There were 4 properties that the tax collector desires to turn over this year. It's 49 North Street, which is land only, 10 International Drive, Sanford, which is land only, 24 Ida Street, Sanford, that's a mobile home in a park on a rented lot, and 22 Girard Street, which is also a mobile home in a park on a rented lot. Those are the only 4 properties that came forward this year. We have, as further information to this, the law changed as far as the sale of said properties this year. Up until April 4th or 5th of this year, when these properties would become acquired, we would then communicate back to the owner of record, if that's even possible. We communicate back with the owner of record and give the owner of record the option of the city invoking the formal process whereby we would use a realtor. For us, we're very fortunate we have a contract realtor that would put an assessment on the property, put the property up for sale, and as part of that sale consideration, you look at what the back taxes, interest, the cost of perfecting the sale, any water, sewer, utility bills that are owed on that property as well. Once that property sells, the city recoups the expenses on both utilities, taxes, lien charges, and such. And then any money left over from that sale would go to said owner of record. The law changed just recently. There was a lot of unknowns as far as perfecting that former process. In fact, Aaron McMahon and I composed a multi-page list of questions, submitted that to our legal counsel. They held it for a week. The law changed, and they said, okay, here's your clarification. So now the law is you must perfect the sale of the properties using that formal process. If the properties can't, using the formal process as I described earlier, if the property fails to sell in a 12-month period under that formal process, then and only then can the municipality go back to its former practices of selling the property. But regardless of the mechanism that's used for the sale of the property, if the former owner of record is known, you're communicating, they get the net proceeds beyond the city's liability. If, for a lot of these, there is no owner of record to communicate with anymore, somebody's passed and the heirs are non-communicative or whatever that situation is, then the excess sale money goes to the state unclaimed properties, and they will sit there and wait to try to perfect it. Because that was kind of the last question we had, because we see that scenario. How long do we hold it, and how, and is there interest due? And so that's been clarified now. We just send it to the state unacquired property, and the state will hold that in perpetuity until it's claimed. So that's the new process for this year. It doesn't, but the tax collector is asking that you accept these properties, and then we will do further notification, but we will work on the movement of these properties unless the council deems otherwise. Two of the more time sensitive are the two trailers that are in a mobile home park on rented lots. So we wish to get those up for sale as quickly as possible.
One of them will be reimbursed our demolition costs, I noticed. 49 North, we took that down.
Yes. Yeah, that will be added into, right?
That'd be great.
Yep. I've already given these files to our realtor, so you can start that process, talk to them about the new change in laws, so we're all on the same page on that at this point in time, so.
All right, Pete?
Steve, it says land only on the first two properties. What is that, mobile homes on there, and we're moving them, or is this empty lots?
No, they're just vacant lots.
Okay, that was my only question.
One of them, 49 North Avenue, is one of the land bank. We took it down.
Yeah.
So it's a lot that's probably buildable.
That's why it rang a bell, yeah, okay.
Any other questions? Okay. All those we had a first and a second? We need a motion, first and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve receiving the tax acquired property from the city.
A second, Ann?
And I would second that.
All those in favor? And last but not least, in order to approve proposed amendment to Chapter 280 of the Sanford ordinances for a revision to 280-11-6 urban zone. This item must be read on two separate occasions. This is the first reading.
And great. Now we have to go back to the other first reading.
Oh, did I miss one?
But I will, but I'm okay that, everybody okay that she doesn't read it again? Yep.
Okay, so we can just vote on that one, then go back to the other?
There's no voting, it's first reading. You just have to do a bunch of reading.
Okay, thank you. So
We
let
get
me,
to sit here and be lazy.
let me go and read the other first. and why I put a check mark there is beyond me. In order to approve proposed ordinances revision for repeal and replace Chapter 265 flood plan management corresponding with the update and NFIP requirements and the new FEMA flood insurance rate maps effective July 17th, 2024. This item requires 2 readings. This is the first reading. Good.
Our evening is done, except for council comments.
Okay. Well,
And
we
an
do have an
executive
executive session.
But that's quick, it's updates.
So, any other council comments? Pete?
Yeah, I got to brag about my son. He just got awarded postmaster of Waterboro. So Stefan, I'm proud of you. It's really a big job. It's a big deal.
Nice.
So thank you. I'm proud of you, kiddo.
Anyone else?
As long as he doesn't go postal.
Ann?
He's a redhead.
I used to hate sitting at the end of the council line when we went down because everybody would take your comments, you know. But Mother's Day is coming up this Sunday, so I just want to wish everybody a very happy Mother's Day out there, and hope we get to spoil up all of us that have moms with us and think of our moms that aren't with us.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Just to plug the Trafton's Walk for Seniors, take your mom. It's Mother's Day weekend. Registration starts at 8. The walk is at 9. It's a very easy walk, and it's fun and non-stressful, but they raise money and do this every year. It's very social, too, and they bake for you. So you can have some baked goods while you wait to walk.
And
you can walk it off.
I have a question for Steve. I know that Allison reported that nationwide, there's going to be this big flyover in Washington. And I do know some of the pilots here were talking about doing a flyover in Sanford on that day. Do we know if they did that or not?
I haven't heard to that extent. They recently did an aerobatic practice at the airport.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah. But they just talked about it at the last meeting, and May 11th is when they are going to do that nationwide. But I'm telling everybody it's for my birthday. So, just wanted to find out if Sanford was going to honor it, too. All right. Any other comments?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I forgot 2 quick things. One, there was a presentation at Friends of Town this week by Bridget, and I apologize to her for her not knowing her last name at the second, but she's working on beautification here in Sanford, and she's been working with some city folks, and I think this is very exciting, and I want to invite everybody also Saturdays between 7 and 8 a.m. Her and a group of Rotarians primarily, but they are looking for other volunteers, are tackling the Rotary to the entrance of town in South Sanford, and they are looking for additional folks to show up with blaze yellow vests and gloves to help pull weeds and begin the process.
Wait a minute, who's the person on the council who's complained about this the most?
John.
I wonder who should go to this.
And then I just want to mention that at the meeting, Eldridge Lumber, which is really quickly becoming a community champion here in Sanford, is going to be working on obtaining mulch for the roundabout to create some around the edges, make things a little bit nicer. So I will be there this Saturday prior to going to the Trafton Walk.
Excellent. Okay, are there any future agenda items? Remember, always, if you need something, you think about it in the middle of the week, you can text me or email me, and we'll put that on. Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Jamie, I just have one question for you. What? Matt? Oh. Matt, we're done. You can ask, go ahead.
Bridget is going to reach out to us on the scheduling for the work in the roundabout. Basically, it's been rainy days, so I'm waiting to hear from her on a sure thing.